aggressive defense to try to prevent Cox from having an abortion. He sent 3 Houston hospitals letters warning of legal consequences, both criminal and civil, if they allowed Cox's physician to provide the procedure. He also argued that Cox had not demonstrated that her life was at imminent risk, including noting that she was sent home after multiple visits to emergency rooms. Cox had cesarean surgeries during her first 2 pregnancies. Her lawsuit argued that inducing labor would carry a risk of uterine rupture because of her prior C-sections, and that another one at full term would endanger her ability to carry another child. But Paxson contended those arguments still fell short. Rather, the only question is whether Miss Cox's condition meets the exception, regardless of how long the child is expected to live. Paxton's office told the court in a filing over the weekend. David?
Now, what's interesting, I want to point this out. This woman is not one of these pro-choice, pro-abortion.
No, she has 2 children.
She has 2 other children, and she might have wanted to have more, and having this particular child going full term with it might have prevented her from having other children, and more than likely the baby would have died anyway. So in this particular case, even though I am pro-life, I'm on her side on this. And the only thing I probably would have done is, knowing the state of Texas was going to be one of the first states to outlaw abortion in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I probably wouldn't have even sought permission. I just would have gone to another state and had abortion, which is what she ended up doing anyway. A judge has been accused of demonizing pregnancy loss after an Ohio woman who suffered a miscarriage at home was charged with a criminal offense and placed under grand jury investigation. Brittany Watts, 33, is accused of abuse of a corpse, a 5th-degree felony that carries a potential penalty of up to a year in prison because she flushed away the remains of her 22-week-old fetus, which she miscarried after it died in utero. Tracy Timko, Watts' lawyer, said, "I am horrified that my client is being demonized for a common experience that many women share. No one should be criminalized or punished for their miscarriage." The case has triggered an outcry and comes against the backdrop of a politically charged national debate over the rights of the unborn and the legal and ethical treatment of women's reproductive issues. Watts' fetus had been deemed unviable during a previous hospital visit. A post-mortem examination also showed that it had died before passing through the birth canal. Investigators found fetal remains stuck in a lavatory after a plumber was called to her home on September the 22nd. Judge Terry Ivanchak ruled that her case should be passed to a grand jury despite expert testimony from Dr. George Sternbenz, a forensic pathologist, that the fetus was non-viable. Timko told local media that miscarriages at home were a regular occurrence, and that if the state of Ohio expects these women to fish those remains from the toilet and deliver them to a hospital, funeral home, or crematorium, the laws need to be changed. We aren't there yet. She added in a statement, Brittany should be able to focus on taking care of herself after losing her pregnancy, but instead she's being forced to defend her actions in a moment that should have never been made public. Brittany, the family, and I are so grateful for the outpouring of public support, and we have been touched that others have publicly shared their own stories of pregnancy loss in response to her case. Thank you all for making clear what we know to be true. Ohio law does not support and should never support criminalizing someone for experiencing pregnancy loss. In a separate case on Thursday, a judge in Texas, of course, as we said, granted a pregnant woman an emergency restraining order against the state in order to allow her to have an abortion. Of course, that was then changed and allowed she went to another state in there. So pretty much that covers the story. So strange. I mean, I don't. How do you feel about this one, Penny?
It's
just already dead.
Yes, I mean, millions of women experience the miscarriage of a baby, and some actually do it on the toilet,
right,
and they flush the toilet afterwards. So this is, I don't know. It's, I think
it's like the guy whose wife died, right? And he put her in a freezer.
Yeah, that's
I
different.
mean, she was already, well, it is, but what they're saying is she did the same thing that he did, abuse a
Right.
corpse.
No,
By
she
not
didn't.
fishing it out. And I disagree. If this is what happened, that it actually, the baby was aborted while she was on the toilet. Come on, seriously?
Yes, she had a miscarriage, and so I think this is a miscarriage of justice. That's where I stand.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, that's good. Well, we're not going to get to the story right now about the gay Santas, or maybe we will with one of our guests. But if we don't get to it, we will bring it to you later in our newscast or tomorrow on the show. In addition to the James O'Keefe story, which we keep trying to get to.
I know. I'll put it like at the top.
Okay,
it's just the news stories come in, and so the other
I
ones.
know, and I'm the one that sends and say we got to cover this. So my bad. Now we're going to take a quick break to tell you who's coming on the show today, Penny.
And awake we go with a shot of espresso.
Good day, and welcome to the Awake Nation guest interviews with guests who defy the mainstream narrative. Grab a cup of coffee while our guests brew the news for you. The Awake Nation, the truth with a shot of espresso.
The Mockingbird Media controls the narrative. We help you determine what is real and what is not.
Global conspiracy with key players at the highest levels of power. It reaches into the lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet.
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow government, I will fear no Satans. Tuesday, December 12th, 2023, our guests are
Christi Tasker. Christi Tasker is an award-winning technologist, international business consultant, designer, manufacturer, artisan. She designs and sells fashion, jewelry, home decor, and fabrics. Christi is also an investigative journalist based in Miami who travels globally to discover truth. She's an investigative journalist for the Awake Nation. You can find her at ChristiTasker.com, PSSRocks.com, PatriotPerspective.com, and ChristiTaskerForMiami.com.
Our next guest is Gary Wayne, author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Mankind. It details the role of modern-day Nephilim in Satan's plan to install the Antichrist at the end of days. Our next guest is Brent Thomas. Brent is the host of Paranormal Portal on TFR Live. You can find Brent on YouTube at Paranormal Portal and on iHeartRadio. His podcast is available all over. And closing out the final hour of the Awake Nation is Gunnar Allen Lindbloom. He is the author of To Be a King. His mother was a Toco of the Detroit Toco crime family. In Gunnar's late teens and early 20s, he was known as an associate or street enforcer for the family. He completed a 13-year stint behind bars and is now a writer and a speaker. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dark Outpost at darkoutpost.tv. There you will find exclusive content, interviews, documentaries, and intel not found anywhere else. For the full show, go to awakenation.tv. Falling down the rabbit hole can hurt. Ow! Ow, that's gonna hurt. We will provide the researchers and whistleblowers. Your mission is to discern the truth from the MSN lies. And now for the interview portion of the Awake Nation. And awake we go with a shot of espresso.
It's showtime.
Every time I hear Penny say, it's showtime, I think of, here's Johnny.
I know. I think of that movie where Robert De Niro was in, where he's a cop, retired cop, and with Eddie Murphy. And Eddie Murphy's like, it's showtime.
And instead it's, here's Christi time.
Welcome Christi Tasker of ChristiTasker.com, PatriotsPerspective.com. How are you today?
I'm good, David. Thank you so much for asking and having me here because we've got a lot to go over today, man.
All right.
Yes,
Well,
you started your new Banana Republic news. You know that how I say hello to people every morning is I say hello, Chiquita Bananas.
Yeah. From the Banana Republic with very few bananas. So, yeah, we've got I was telling my mom this morning, I said, all the people who are writing articles, we have people writing articles, whistleblowers coming forward, and they're all saying, when is the article going to come out? And I'm like, well, you just gave me the last piece of the information yesterday. We do have to write this and get it online with graphics and photos, for those
I will
people.
help.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Let's just put it this way. I was going to show our audience something very special of one of the things that's going to go on. I don't know if you guys can see the Champlain Tower South. A little bit of evidence regarding that. We're going to see what's going on with that. But this week we had Art Basel in town.
I saw that.
Yeah. So during Art Basel is the largest art show in America, all the way from Basel, Switzerland.
Wow.
They had some interesting guests, Chrissy.
Oh, very interesting guests. Well, let's just say the Kardashians made their appearance, because people follow the Kardashians. Yes.
Well, they did have a shop in Miami. So what was their appearance for with it?
Well, they utilize these celebrities to get other people to Art Basel and to the other shows because, they charge upwards of $50, $75 just for entry to the art show. And then on top of that, this year I noticed something extra special in terms of art. We had our lovely city of Miami. So part of the art week, it's actually called Art Week. So if you can imagine, there's all types of shows throughout all of Miami. So we have Art Week here in Miami. I think the city of Miami might have gotten sued in the past because they kept calling like the entire art week Art Basel when Art Basel is literally a show. And so it was kind of funny because in 2000, I want to say like 2015, 2016, we actually, in my venue, we held a private event for Art Basel, the show. And so, I was going through the branding and I'm like, but everybody keeps saying Art Basel. So how are they really going to know like where to come? And what makes this brand different than any others? So we kind of got that clarified. So now the city of Miami has to refer to Art Basel as Art Week. But one interesting thing about Art Basel this year is they wanted you to have the app for Art Basel on your phone to enter the building.
Really?
Oh, I didn't know they had any.
So you were utilizing, were they utilizing ID, like your photo ID? And then how do you get when you get the app?
It was basically a situation where I think they're actually trying to prevent handing somebody like a ticket that they could then transfer to someone else. So I think they see it as a way to, prevent that exchange or, prevent ticket sharing.
That was weird.
Yeah, I thought it was very weird because they were really being pushy about if they were going to let me as press in without the app on my phone. So if anybody ever does this to our audience,
you actually like go in just as an individual and then buy a ticket and walk into the event?
Yes, you can. Yeah, absolutely. That's the majority of people there. That's what they're doing. They buy a ticket, they go in, and their hopes are that they're going to get to see celebrities. So as you can imagine,
So it's more about seeing people than it is the art then.
Yeah, pretty much, David. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. It is like it's like a fashion show within itself because, everybody has on their most artistic what some people might appear to be in costume.
Uh-huh.
They're trying to send
It's
messages.
more like a Comic-Con for art.
Right. Yes, very much so. So I'm going to be posting a lot of those photos on Banana Republic News so that everybody can see what those are. I apologize, I do not have it up right now. But when
Are
it
they going
comes,
to take him to the dog park?
huh?
Are they going to take him to the dog park? That's artistic. You took us on a tour of that.
No, they didn't exactly. I don't think Joe's dog park is making
Making news anymore.
No. Dictator Joe, he's already having a little bit of issue here in Miami this week because they've realized that their budget's $56 million off. Just 56 million. But just 56 million.
Okay,
So,
it's just 56 million, Christy.
oh, listen, it's hilarious. I should actually show you just to see what they've done. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know, but like during my campaign, I was doing the Tuesdays at 12, town hall Tuesdays at 12. You guys remember when I would do that? Like afterwards,
they run from you.
Yeah. So no, they did. They did. So now they're being all cool. So they're hosting. They're going to keep us updated. So we'll play a little clip for this for our audience because like you can't even make this stuff up. I mean, this is what happens when the budget is $56 million short. Okay, and this is an explanation of. Let's see what they're going to do. Hold on. Let's see. Like I wanted to find Art's original. Like he's going to be better at social media, he says. Well, he's number one double posting, which I think is hilarious. But evidently he has removed his first video. So let's just play his. Actually, no. That's the November 1st video. So let's see.
Sort of spent the last 3.5 or so years in this job as city manager, really kind of trying to avoid social media, really trying to stay a little more under the radar.
Yes, they're trying to stay under the radar and avoid social media because it's called publishing and then people know and we can take the data and use it against you, Art. And in 3.5 years, he's tried to stay off of social media.
Or focus more on the job. But I think it's probably the appropriate time to sort of reintroduce myself to social media with an opportunity to sort of create some transparency for our residents, business owners, our partners in the city. So I'm going to start a regular series where every week or two, I'm going to sort of focus on what's happening in the city and give our viewers, those that are actually sort of hearing my voice, and hopefully that expands, but an opportunity to really get a sense of what's really going on in the city in every aspect of what we're doing, whether it's projects or whether it's legislation, and sort of peel back the onion a little bit and show what it is, how it's happening, where it's happening, and hopefully create an opportunity for people to get their truth from the source. And the source, no better source than the city manager's office. So look forward to the next few weeks, and hopefully this takes off.
Okay, he's removed one of the videos. I was looking for the other one where he says, oh, the $56 million budget shortage. It's kind of an accident. We called this department and then we called that department and they told us it's okay. So we're just going to hold another meeting before the 2 new commissioners are sworn in because they're desperately trying to get this budget passed. And evidently the state or the SEC said, no, you need all 5 commissioners to vote on this because the budget has to be unanimous. It can't be where one commissioner's like withholding. So they know that the two new commissioners most likely are not going to pass the budget. However, I don't really know what happened yesterday, to be truthful. I haven't even looked because it's such a clown show. And when I looked at the documents and then I listened to his video, I'm like, well, number one, if they told you that all 5 commissioners need to vote, number one, you don't even have 2 of the commissioners sworn in. So you're just going to have to go back to the drawing board. So anything they do, they're going to have to redo. And then, of course, I'm sure that there were another 2 or 3 hours late hosting the meeting. So that's another thing. They're never, ever on time. They waste the public's time like it's no tomorrow. Like the public just has plenty of time to sit around and wait on them.
Right.
So these are things that, we're also trying to get Florida statute changed so that if they don't start the meeting within a reasonable amount of time, then they actually should be having to pay the public, in my opinion. If you've got, hundreds of people sitting there, whether they're online or in person, and you're starting a meeting. I mean, sometimes these meetings literally start almost 3 hours late. It's almost like a joke.
That's crazy. I was so mad. I don't like if somebody's late. I'm usually an hour early, and if somebody's
this
late,
is like 3 hours.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, no, it's sick. It's one of those things where even journalists, they'll sit there and say, oh, the city meeting is 2.5 hours into my wait to cover the city meeting. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy, actually. The new commissioners haven't even been sworn in yet, and they're constantly trying to push things through. So it's going to be very interesting to see. People are just now figuring out that the person that ran against me, Damian Pardo, he claimed to be like this longtime financial advisor. We'll come to find out he's only been a financial advisor with his license for like 18 months. He kind of forgot,
wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. So investigators are, interested in learning more about that. I don't really have any more information on it. They asked me, did I know? And I'm like, well, all I know is when there's somebody that doesn't show up, doesn't request records, doesn't really want to talk about the budget, I become very concerned. So sorry, Miami, that's what you get when you don't ask enough questions.
I guess not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it literally is really crazy. And then here during Art Basel, the art itself, we all know what's happening in the world, but the art world also knows what's happening in the world.
Yes,
So what I saw is I saw either very, very colorful, fun, cheery art, or I saw very dark art. There's one that we're going to be posting on bananarepublicnews.com, probably the darkest. And actually, I don't even know. And the reason I haven't published a lot of this, like even on my own social media, is because it is so either satanic or it actually encourages, like, for instance, there's one where Putin's ashes are at a satanic ritual.
Oh God.
Oh, okay.
No, really.
Wow.
They filmed this, and it's actually, the little jars are labeled like Putin's ashes, and they're having a ritual with his ashes, or what's not with his actual ashes, obviously, but who knows? But yeah, people are they're very in tune with, Clinton and people needing to be jailed. They're very in tune with, the rapes, the murders, the baby killings. Yeah. During Art Basel. Yeah. Some of the artists.
Okay.
The art was very interesting, Penny. I think our audience is going to
people my way.
Yeah. No, I mean, the artists
that I know that you're going to be talking about.
Yeah. We definitely need to interview the artist themselves, because, there's definitely stories behind some of the artists and the art. So that part was very interesting. There was a lot of art that was sold this year, and a lot of regular art that I'll say that was sold, in other words, art.
This is not just on display. You can actually purchase these things.
Yeah, no. This is where the money laundering occurs, David.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Not only does the money laundering occur, but on Banana Republic News, the other thing I have is a clip for us, and I'll have all of this up where we can show the audience next week. But I just wanted to tell you, like what is occurring right now. So before we entered Art Basel, NetJet's pilots were out protesting because they are not being paid a fair wage. Well, when I interviewed NetJet's pilots, and we were talking about their CEO, which they do not particularly seem to care for. Their CEO has never been a CEO before. These pilots are pilots that are very much like Epstein's pilots. These are all private pilots. There were over 150 of them protesting during Art Basel because they just so happened to be in town for Art Basel. So keep in mind, private pilots are the ones who have to take the flight logs like we saw with Jeffrey Epstein.
Uh-huh.
Okay. These private pilots are seeing everything. They're the ones who were often coerced into trying to fly people or not document someone on a flight. And they're being given a really difficult time when they say, no, ma'am, I need to see your ID before you get on the flight. I need to document who you are because I have to let, it should just be recorded on the flight logs. We have to know. The other thing that I have coming up this week is Alan Dershowitz. I'm hoping to meet with Alan Dershowitz, who, believe it or not, there's this little guy, and I'm pretty sure he's a CIA agent or used to be a CIA agent, who he's always at this flea market. And he's like, I think you need to meet with Alan Dershowitz. And I'm like, does he know who I am? Does he? And he's like, oh yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And so this guy is, he's going to be on Banana Republic News as well, because he's got some very interesting alien stories. I actually want to get him with Carrie Cassidy, Penny. So I may reach out to you and see if I can have her information to.
Yeah, we'd like to have him on the show too, as well as Alan.
Yeah, if he'll come on for sure. I've been like working on him for a while because he didn't want to be videoed.
Definitely write for you in exchange for guests.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we have lots of good guests, Penny. We are not limited by good guests.
But I will help you do the interviews if you so desire.
Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. I mean, some of these interviews, like I'm saying, when it comes to like this guy, I think he's had such like an alien experience. I don't know that I'm going to know what questions, to really ask him to get to the root of it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because I don't understand that part. All I know is he said that Alan Dershowitz would come by his booth and keep in mind.
Alan was an alien? Is that what he's saying?
No, I don't think he's saying he's an alien. No, he's not saying he's an alien. I just had a lot of questions regarding Alan, why he was on the flight logs, and I asked him to ask Alan. And so he's like, well, maybe you should come to Alan's book signing. So I'm going to go to Alan's book signing and, try to ask him, why was he on the flight logs? Maybe there is more to the story.
He was actually on the island.
You can ask Alan this, but if you ask him this question, he'll never come on our show.
Right. I know, David. Exactly. So
he was quoted as saying that he believes, and I can find you the quote and send it to you if you want me to, so that I can back it up. He was quoted as saying that he believes, he was talking about Epstein's flight log. He didn't talk about his being on there so much, but he did say that he believes the age of consent should be 14 for girls.
Well, I'll say this: Georgia law actually says 14 is the age of consent. So
really,
yeah.
In some states it is. Dershowitz represented, if for our people that don't know, such celebrity clients as Mike Tyson, Patty Hearst, Leona Helmsley, Julian Assange, Jim Baker. He overturned convictions for Harry Reams, for Klaus von Bülow.
Harry Reams, another porn star.
Remember Klaus von Bülow, who murdered his wife, Sunny? And he served as an appellate advisor on the murder of O.J. Simpson, alongside with Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey. He was a member of Harvey Weinstein's defense team in 2018, of President Donald Trump's defense team in his first impeachment trial, and he was a member of Jeffrey Epstein's defense team and helped negotiate a 2006 non-prosecution agreement on Epstein's behalf. So I'd want to have a lot more questions for him than why were you on the flight log?
Right. Well, why not only why was he on the flight log, I also want to know, was he under house arrest in 2021, in December of 2020? No, actually 22, maybe 22, 21. I have to look back at dates because he was supposed to be here speaking at an event. And I was told he was under house arrest. And I told the group, hey, he's going to back out on you last minute because he's supposedly on house arrest. Well, they didn't believe me.
For what?
He was supposedly on house arrest. I mean, this is when, we were hearing that there were prosecutions going down.
Right.
So, whether he was actually being prosecuted or maybe he was just sick, who knows? I mean, he is an older man now, I mean, so, I hope these people.
Did you know he was one of Nelson Mandela's lawyers?
He's been a lawyer for a lot of people. So I know that he knows a lot, a lot more than a lot of people want to think about him, so.
He argued against censorship of pornography on the First Amendment grounds and maintained the consumption of pornography was not harmful.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Adult pornography is legal.
Yeah.
Whether you
So,
look at it or not.
Penny, I'm going to try to play nice with him so that we can get him on the show and ask him a lot more questions.
Well, we'll play next to them. We'll get him on the show, and then we'll ambush him. No,
we don't do ambush.
No. Although I would be honest. I'm going to ask him tough questions if he comes on. I'm going to be fair. I mean,
Yeah, if he'll come on. I mean, he's an attorney, so he'll divert, David.
Yeah, I know he will. The attorneys are very good at that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he'll divert.
So can you tell us, was there one more person that was at Art Basel that you'd like to mention before we ask?
Well, there was tons of Abramovich art.
That's an artist there with the blood and the bodies and the
This time she had a furniture collection. You should see the furniture. It's like these ginormous, like very square chairs that have these huge crystals at the top. It literally looked like somebody could hang from these chairs.
Maybe they could.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. It looked like it was a. Wait till you see the chairs.
Yeah, I saw them.
Yeah, that's right. I think that we sent you a photo, right? Mom sent you a photo.
So, yeah. Christi, where can people find you? And you have 5,000 endeavors. How's your fashion line going?
Good. Very good. So
they promote it. It's still Christmas time. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Everybody, Mom is actually packing. We've got orders going out this morning. So go to ChristiTasker.com and you can find all kinds of gifts. We do hand package all the gifts if you want a note written, if you want them gift wrapped. There's no better place to find and send your gifts, and we can send them worldwide right now because we have about 13 days left before Christmas Day. So they should even get to Europe. If you need gifts to go to Europe, believe it or not, we ship internationally. So do make sure that if you do have an international gift that you do get it in today, and get your other gifts in as soon as possible. And speaking of which, next week I'll have last minute gifts that I am sending my grandkids because I do think I have some pretty good gifts and things that maybe people have not thought of before that kids absolutely love, and how as Gaga can send a $15 gift and it sometimes overpower the $200 or $300 worth of things that other people might want to send. So
this is all at ChristiTasker.com.
Yep. ChristiTasker.com to buy gifts from my boutique. And then also make sure that you follow PatriotsPerspective.com and PSThisRocks.com. If you're on PatriotsPerspective.com as a registered on our mailing list, you will also get Banana Republic News, which you can opt out of if you don't like Banana Republic News, but I think everybody's going to like it.
All right. Very good. So that please go there today, and because Christmas is just around the corner, and if you have someone who's difficult to buy for, it's an excellent. Are you wearing some of your jewelry today?
Yes.
See, look how beautiful that is. There you go. Wow.
I'm wearing the Art Deco earrings today, but there's all kinds of rabbits. There's all kind of fun earrings, jewelry, rings, bracelets. Beautiful.
So if you want to look as hot as Christi Tasker, go to ChristiTasker.com and get the jewelry, and you will. All right, Christi, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you again
Okay.
for always
Thanks,
being here.
guys.
I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much. God bless you,
All
audience. Thank you.
it. God
Thank
bless you.
you.
Too. Love her. Christi Tasker here on the Awake Nation. An intoxicated Florida man threw food and sexually assaulted a manatee statue in a drunken rage Friday. 23-year-old Anthony Lessa allegedly caused the disturbing scene at Rick's Reef, a seafood restaurant in St. Petersburg. According to police, Mr. Lessa was throwing gator nuggets into the restaurant. When restaurant employees confronted Lessa about throwing the food, he became belligerent, began performing sexual acts on the life-size manatee statue outside the front door of the restaurant. When police arrived on the scene, Lessa appeared heavily intoxicated and kept asking why he was being arrested. Well, you know why? Because the manatee was underage. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's going to be Gary Wayne, author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. You're not going to want to miss that. The next hour of the Awake Nation, of course, is sponsored by our good friends over at Numi, makers of NutraSwish liquid glutathione.
Remember when this was the best delivery method for music? Remember when this was the best delivery method for supplements? Every industry evolves and improves with new breakthroughs in science and technology. Here at Numi, we've used a proprietary technology to solve an issue that's been around since nutritional supplementation began: the problem of absorption. So many of today's supplements are less effective due to their inability to be absorbed naturally by the body. Using our own proprietary hydrostat nano delivery breakthrough, we reduce the particle size of critical nutrients smaller than ever before, allowing them to absorb in your mouth while swishing for 30 seconds or more. Glutathione is your body's master antioxidant. It's responsible for boosting your energy, detoxifying cells, reducing inflammation, and boosting the immune system. If glutathione is so amazing, why have you never heard of it? Because glutathione is extremely fragile, and if taken orally, it will be destroyed via the digestive process, rendering it virtually useless to the body. Until now, NutraSwish applies nanotechnology to achieve maximum absorption. Now, glutathione and other nutrients can be absorbed simply and quickly by swishing in the mouth instead of being destroyed in the stomach. Using this same nanotechnology, we've created the ultimate skincare product, Numi Skin. We've been able to achieve unparalleled absorption for key ingredients, including collagen, hyaluronic acid, and more. Some of the top skin experts in the world work together to create the ultimate blend of skin-enhancing nanonutrients, creating the most amazing before and after results. With our nano solution, you no longer have to wait months to experience the effects of skincare and supplementation. Our customers are noticing a difference within a matter of days. Don't wait to look, feel, and live your best life. A new you starts with Numi.
Yeah, folks, just you got to have this. This is God's molecule. This is we die without glutathione in our body. And this is the easiest and most cost-effective way to get this molecule inside your body, which does so many things. I mean, you can go to the doctor and get IV injections of it, but it costs you like $500 a pop and only lasts 4 hours. Take 2 capfuls of this in the morning and 2 at night, and you're good to go. It's going to make you feel fantastic. They also have a new skin spray, which rejuvenates your skin, takes out the wrinkles, and makes you feel absolutely fantastic, as you saw in that little commercial. So go to our website, either one, awakenation.tv, or our news website, theawakenation.com. There's a banner ad right there at the top of the page. Click on it to take you to the awakenation.numi.com and order this liquid glutathione. You know, I was thinking about what Christi Tasker had to say last hour about this art. What it was called? Art. You're muted.
Art Basel.
Art Basel. Now, you know, I would have gone there and purchased something from Maria Abramovich, but I don't know if it would fit in the same room with my Andre Serrano's Piss Christ. I had to pass on that. All right, let's bring in our next guest who's patiently waiting to get through all of this nonsense so he can talk about something serious. Gary Wayne, author of the Genesis 6 Conspiracy and soon to be released Genesis 6 Conspiracy 2. How you doing, Gary?
Doing very good and feeling a little bit better these days. So on the mend. So
You had COVID, right? Was that what it was?
I did, and I got a version of long COVID. So it's kind of up and down, up and down. So some days I feel good, some days I don't, but a little bit better in sort of the trend direction. So feeling good this morning. So gotta like that.
Well, I hope you stay healthy through the holidays and into the new year, and take some ivermectin, my friend. I'll tell you, it's good for you.
Yeah, it's not really available in Canada. We have some rather draconian laws, they're anti-Trump. So anything to do with that whole thing, they did not permit any of that.
That like online? Can you not?
You can, but you have to get it into Canada. It gets quite expensive. You can use a drop box, but then you got some issues with taking drugs across and purchasing them. So there's, it gets a little complicated.
Okay, maybe what we should do is order some for Gary here, and then I'll forward it to you in a brown paper bag.
Oh yeah. So it's been a rough November, but feeling a little bit better and still working hard and doing I only had to cancel a couple of shows through the whole process, but and I do about 5 or 6 shows
you
a week.
Were on with L.A. Marzulli on some sort of a show, I think, right? Recently, right?
No, not recently. No. I tend to have some conversations with LA, and we keep talking about hooking up on some things, but we never quite get together. So,
okay, we've had him on the show too. What I thought we would talk about today, because we are 2 weeks out, basically from Christmas as and we have
Yuletide.
You have been that too. What I wanted to do too, and we talked a little bit about Christmas the last time you were on, but what I wanted to do today is kind of go back to the origins of when we had you on the program. I want you, over the course of the next hour, to tell everyone about the origin of your book, why people should buy it, why it would make an excellent Christmas gift, and who would be really interested in reading some of these fantastic chapters of what I consider to be one of the best books ever that I have ever read. If you are interested in the Bible and prophecy and giants and the Nephilim, this is the book. And I thought we would just let you turn the floor over to you and tell people what this book is about and just sell them on it, because I think it's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah. So I would say one of the largest benefits for owning this book is that you're going to get a sense after reading it what this world is all about. And there's so many people in the world today that says there's something not quite right.
Yeah.
We're not sure where it's headed, and we're not sure why it's heading that way. So this book is going to cover off of that. And what I hear from so many people is that for the first time, the Old Testament makes sense to me, but more importantly, for the first time, the world makes sense to me. So now that wasn't quite the inspiration that I had for the book, but for me, it was kind of like that, except that I wanted to write a book, not necessarily as it turned out, but things change and you do as you're led to do. And so I continued on that kind of research. And this is a book that is a 6,000-year investigation into what I call the House of Dragons. So if your kids are watching all of these House of Dragon shows and things like that, you're going to be able to start to understand some of the language that they're talking about. And when I talk about the House of Dragon, that is I have a dragon seal on the cover. So it's kind of that whole ideology that there's this royal house that goes back into prehistory, and it sort of intersects into everything from what our history, from what was, what is, and what's going to be. And so it's a 6,000-year investigation into that House of Dragon. And it begins in Genesis 6, one of the passages that churches don't like to talk about. In fact, as a publisher, anytime you mention, or as a writer, anytime you mention Genesis 6, even Christian publishers run away from you. So it's a topic that is under-explained. So what the book does is it explains what happened in prehistory. So it starts in Genesis 6 with the creation of the giants by the fallen angels. And then it goes on to give you a prehistory of how we arrived with the polytheist religions and the patriarchs of that, and how that developed into the 7 sacred sciences that developed the religion that partnered with the fallen angels, the giants before the flood, and this mystical religion to essentially usurp the entire world and parade that world with the advancement of that technology that we're just catching up to today into the first apocalypse. And then how humanity gets a second chance, but how these organizations, bloodlines, and religions cross the flood. And we get the first sort of biblical reference to that at Babel, when they're developing the tower in the city, and we're told about the knowledge that they have that's not accounted for biblically, that anything that they plan to do is working as one people with one language. Nothing is going to be, they're going to be able to do essentially anything they want to do with that knowledge. And what most people don't know is Nimrod, who introduces the Enochian mysticism that he receives as the religion from Hermes and the knowledge of the antediluvian epoch, he is acclaimed as one of the great patriarchs of Masonry. So you're going to learn about the secret societies and their beginnings, which starts before the flood and then crosses the flood. And it's all part of this organizational structure that shows up immediately within 100 years after the flood at Babel, and usurps all of the kingships, usurps all of the religions, usurps the complete upper class of society, and dominates our history, and is active to this day. And what they're doing today to bring about the end time that you'll see in sort of the pastoral terms of a new world order, globalism, things like that. So it follows those bloodlines, those organizations, as to what they did before the flood, after the flood, what they're doing today, and what to expect from these people in terms of what they're planning to bring about with world government. And it gives you the language to understand the allegories and the taciturn language that they display in plain sight. And so you're going to be able to understand like what 1,000 points of light is when they're talking about the New World Order.
So every conspiracy theory that we talk about today with regard to the modern world, basically can be traced back 6,000 years to the beginnings of all of the secret societies and everything that stemmed from the book of Genesis. And so if someone is interested in what's going on today and they want to know where do people get these ideas, this is the book to get, because it's going to explain that, as opposed to just saying, well, they're Freemasons. Well, what are the Freemasons? Well, they're a secret society. Where do they come from? Well, I don't know. Well, you're going to tell them where all of this began through your research.
Yeah, how they all began, how they work together, what they've done, what they're doing, and what they're going to do. And, you know, there's so much misinformation and disinformation with the word conspiracy today. And this is the largest conspiracy. And they've been conspiring to ensure humankind doesn't reach our destiny to be raised up to be like angels in the future time. The giants were created by the fallen angels to justify their rebellion and to prevent the Adamites as being created as a resolution to the angelic rebellion. And you know that word conspiracy, you know, you look that up in the dictionary, it means a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. A conspiracy to destroy or replace a government or manipulate results. Okay. The theory part is added onto it to as the disinformation and the misinformation, so that they can do things in plain sight and call you sort of extremist or crazy or loony. And it has synonyms of plot, scheme, machination, ploy, trick, ruse, and subterfuge. And it's the action of secretly plotting or conspiring. And biblically, we get the word conspiracy and counsel and words like that are used. And that's got a Hebrew word that attaches to it as well, that most people aren't aware of. So this idea of conspiracy that David's talking about, that all the world is conspiring against Israel, that was something that was well understood in prehistory and is sort of been pushed under so that they continue to do things in plain sight. And that's the Hebrew word kesher in the Old Testament. And it means an unlawful alliance, a confederacy, conspiracy, and treason. And that's exactly what it is. So when people are dismissing things as conspiracy theories, they are trying to change the meaning and use it to attack people who are uncovering what's going on, and at the same time projecting that you're doing what they're doing.
Right.
It's a common tactic of the globalists and the spurious forces.
Would it be safe to say, Gary, that if every Bible-believing Christian person were to read your book, because it's obvious that the churches don't talk about anything like this in their sermons, even at Bible study groups and that sort of thing. Everything is pretty much the New Testament, and they don't really get into this. But if they did, then those Christians a lot of Christians are very liberal, as we know. In fact, the same people that claim to be Christians are also the ones that are pro-abortion in many cases and that sort of thing. I don't want to go into the abortion thing, but bottom line is what I'm saying is, if Christians were to really take a look at the entire history of Christianity and read both books of the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, and read, not both books, but you know what I'm saying, and then read your book, they would become conspiracy theorists themselves, and they would not be dismissive of those of us who are concerned about the direction that our world is headed in right now.
Exactly. And that's what it does do. And the first book tweaked this thirst or this hunger by Christians who are not being taught in the churches about prehistory and prophecy to say, this is great. This gives us that greater context, but we want to know more what's in the Bible about this. And so the second book is specifically targeted at Christians to answer those questions. And what's also interesting is that one of the questions that I used to ask a lot, and I think should be asked, I should be using more often for people when they say, well, Jesus is just such a large thing, like how could it be? And that's sort of what it makes it difficult to believe in the size of this conspiracy, the transgenerational nature of it, the 6,000 years plotting to destroy humankind that crosses the flood and continues to this time and will continue through the end time. But you have to understand the royal bloodlines that run the world and the true money that's off the books that runs the world if you want to understand what's going on in this world. And I used to say, and when people say, well, so what about what the kings and the queens or the royal bloodlines do? And I used to ask hosts, well, what makes a king and what makes a queen?
Yes.
Have you ever thought about that? Most people, their bloodlines do. And it's a dynastic. Royals are a bloodline. The kings of God, as you take that back in its etymology. And they take those genealogies and they keep those genealogies right back into prehistory. They take it back to a Rephaim or a Nephilim, or both as a patriarch, as a spurious offspring, and then back to a celestial mafia godfather. And so when King Charles...
A celestial mafia godfather.
Yes, they're godfathers of giants. So, and the mafia is an initiatory organization as well, with a patriarchal godfather at the head. It's the kind of the dark side and the underworld side of how they control the world. It's the same type of organizational structure. And King Charles III, when he was crowned in that ancient ritual of inheritance that goes back to before the flood, back
Yes.
to early after the
And
flood.
I saw the crown jewels. I saw that.
Yeah. And the divine, I want to be careful with that one. Yeah. Was it R-rated?
Crown jewels, but
Was the show R-rated?
no, I mean, the crown and the.
I haven't seen any crown jewels in a long time.
Poor thing, we gotta help it. All right.
So this divine right of inheritance, where he swears his oath to a god,
Yeah.
that's how they can do these polytheist rituals in plain sight. It's not to the God of the Bible. It's to his patriarchal godfather that he's swearing his allegiance to, whom he gets his divine right. And these genealogies, like with King Charles III, because he's in the news lately, and some people look at him as an antichrist figure. I think he's a possible candidate, probably a little bit old, but there's lots of candidates.
Well, as you
But he's on
and
record. I was going to say he's on record for saying he takes his genealogies in part back to Vlad the Impaler.
right.
Yes, he does.
And for people who want that, I can send them the link on that.
And he's proud of it too.
Yeah, and Vlad the Impaler is the individual that Dracula is based on. Red-haired, pale-skinned, hazel-eyed, noble Celt. Tuatha Doddan, the Tanu, a Rephaim giant for after the flood. He's educated at the School of Solomon in Austria, and he takes his bloodline back in part. There's a scioning in there, but it goes back to one of the Hercules tribes, the Egrathi, and he and Hercules is the offspring of Zeus and Alchemy, a human female. So and he's got another patriarch that goes back to another god that goes back to Kezadiah of the book of Enoch. And these are their genealogies. I mean, they track them, and you can get these records at sometimes. It's also known as Tamamil. And what's interesting is that chamomile is kind of considered in ancient Oli kind of the same word, and that with Kezadiah, what he was also producing was a concoction for abortions that they would call chamomile.
Really? Like
Yes.
chamomile tea?
Yes. Now, I'm not saying the modern version is today, but that's what they called it in ancient ology. And so when we look at the abortion movement, that's a polytheist doctrine to raise humankind up to be like gods, that they have the decision over life or death. And I'm not one that doesn't say there isn't special exceptions for things. And I do think we have free choice in the world, but we need to understand that these doctrines are the doctrines of polytheism, and that the sciences that also are part of this structure, it goes also back to polytheism. And the globalist movement is a polytheist movement, and they're all occultists. There's very few Christians, and if they're Christians, they're probably not true Christians if they call themselves Christians, that are involved in the globalist movement. So all of this is sort of tied in together, but I just like that Vlad the Impaler genealogy, and that comes through the Hanover genealogy of marriage, and then back to the Windsors as the Windsors became the Hanover transplants and changed their name to Windsor in World War I.
Now, let me ask you this question, and this is, we know that this is not, as I said, talked about in the church, and it doesn't matter what denomination of Christianity.
Yeah.
The Catholics are the most mysterious, obviously, with all of their rituals and everything else, and the Vatican and the whole thing that looks like a snake up there. I mean, we know something's going on there, but is it? Would you be willing to go out on a limb and say that most organized religions, I'm not talking about being a Christian and having a relationship with Jesus Christ, believing him and accepting him as your Lord and Savior, as I do and as you do and as Penny does and as most of our viewers do. But I'm talking about the concept of the organized hierarchy of a church, no matter what denomination it is.
Yep.
Would it be safe to say a lot of them are a cult or cults
Yes.
these days because of the brainwashing that they do, which actually takes away from our relationship with God?
Yeah, there's been a significant invasion into both Catholicism and into Protestantism. At the seminary levels, they're told not to teach prehistory and prophecy. They're told to ask people to leave the church if they're going to ask about those questions.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're instructed to just silence these ideas, and so there's a lot of imagery, whether it's in Catholicism or it's in Protestantism, that shows a secret society and Gnostic imagery. And anytime you see that, because they want to display their incursion into the churches in plain sight, and they want you worshiping under some of those symbols. So be very, very careful of things, that you would see in a Christian church. Critically analyze all of the idolatry that's sort of up there. And they like to invade at the leadership level. Then they kind of rationalize themselves as Gnostic Christians, that they believe in Jesus, but not necessarily as the Son of God. Right. And so they tend to dominate the elder level or the council level of the churches. And then what gets taught and how things are decorated are in their sort of purview. So you have to critically analyze the setting that you're in, what they teach, what they don't teach, and how they teach it. And anytime they're trying to sort of reinvent what the Bible says or reinterpret what the Bible says, or to say the Bible may not be always accurate, you start to understand that that church has probably been invaded. Just because they don't want to teach prophecy or prehistory doesn't mean that minister has been compromised, but it might be an indication. It could also be that's what he was taught to do and he's just following orders. But I would suggest that ministers read the book for themselves.
I was going to ask, that was my next question. That was my next question, because I was going to ask you, we know that at the hierarchy level, the popes, the cardinals, maybe certain bishops in the Catholic Church, and in other hierarchies within other denominations of Christianity, the seminaries and that sort of thing, the leadership is keenly aware of all this stuff. I believe that they know about the Genesis 6 conspiracy. I would assume, but I'm wondering, are the young people who come out of the seminary and become either priests or pastors at their local church, is some of this information, because you said they're told not to talk about it, are they all even exposed to it, or is some of this even kept from them and they don't even, maybe all they're taught is, maybe the New Testament is drummed into them and they're not even taught about what went down in Genesis and some of these other books, so maybe they can't be held responsible, or do they all know about it?
Yeah, no, they don't, and it's always being suppressed. So I hear from students in seminary schools, and I hear from ministers afterwards and say, I understand you have information that you can provide on this. Can you send it to me, because I've never been taught this, and I'm being told not to research it, and I know there's something wrong. I just don't know how to sort of get at it or where to start. So what they do is they kind of focus more on just the concept of Jesus and his principles and his values, and that's all good stuff. But you have to teach the Bible, in my opinion, through the whole context of the Bible, because what Jesus is teaching is built on what happened before and what's coming. So you have to have both ends.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that when Jesus came in the world, he threw out, because remember he said, I give you 2 commandments: love your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And a lot of people took that to believe, okay, the 10 Commandments and everything that happened in the Old Testament, Jesus, to them, threw that out the window and said, forget about all that. And he is like Christianity, I hate to say Christianity light, but Bible light, L-I-T-E. In other words, we're going to make it a little easy. You didn't like that heavy stuff where he destroyed the world with the flood. You didn't like all that crap. So we'll get rid of that. And we'll try a lighter version that you can tolerate. But Jesus also said, I did not came to change prophecy. I came to fulfill it, which means that he was bringing that history with him, and trying to make it more palatable, but not eliminating it and saying, forget about all that. And I think people have
and he taught the veracity of the accuracy of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Because the New Testament hadn't been written. He's just speaking it, and it's going to be recorded. And he said there was not one iota, not one thing that had changed in that scripture, and that you could test its veracity that way. And that Jesus, as you said, he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law and add the spirit of the law to it, as opposed to this legalism, which what he was doing with his sacrifice. But one of the key things that I would point to Christians that are saying, I don't know about what you're talking about on this conspiracy with world government and the fallen angels and stuff like that, I would point to a passage very early on in Jesus's commission where he is going out to the desert for 40 days. And he's going to fast. And along comes Satan.
Right.
So he's a real figure. He's not making them up.
No.
The Messiah, Jehovah, does not make things up.
No.
And Satan is offering him, if he follows Satan, all of the kingdoms of the world. He has ownership, authority over the world. And we're told later on in the New Testament, he's the God of this world and the prince of this world for a time. And Jesus could have been ruling then versus coming back to fulfill prophecy. But he's going to go through the process of what has to be done for redemption for humankind, whereas Satan is trying to destroy humankind. But he has that kind of power. And all that's happening with the beast empires is trying to bring all of that rule under one power so that the Antichrist can come forward. And that's what's been happening both before and after the flood. So you can imagine there would have been an Antichrist type figure before the flood, just as there's been, because nothing is new under the sun. What was will be again, as we're told in Ecclesiastes 1. So you have this recycling thing, and that's why Michael's in place to prevent Antichrist from coming until the ordained time. He doesn't fight the beast empires from coming to power. He just fights Antichrist from getting to power. So when the New Testament talks about we fight both against the invisible ones and the visible ones, and not just flesh, we need to understand that, and that the flesh are the spurious offspring of the celestial mafia.
Here's an interesting question, which we know that we have free will, right?
Yep.
Did Jesus have free will?
Of course.
So, as such, he was subject to temptation, as we all are. Do you think that when Satan tempted him in that desert, he considered Satan's offer? I mean, he dismissed it, but do you think he even considered it?
Yeah, he's fighting off the soul and the body that was created for him that's of this world, and his spirit came into that oiketerion. So it's influencing, because the soul and the spirit merge. So you're having that corrupt world where that body and soul have grown up with, that's trying to influence the spirit, just as we experience, with our conscious fighting. That's what's going on between the spirit from heaven and the corruption that we all live in. And he's having to fight it off, and he prays regularly. And it's an amazing thing where he is experiencing everything we go through in a world that's been corrupted by these fallen angels, so much so that it affects them as well when they're in the world in a physical way. And he's going to be overcoming it, but not without having to fight it every step of the way, because the whole world is designed to lead you away from God with its corruption.
It's interesting because one has to wonder, when God created his son, if he if he considered the possibility that Jesus could have said no to this, and then what, that sort of thing.
Well, I would say, yeah, that's an excellent question from a human perspective, but both Jesus and God are Alpha Omega. So they know the beginning from the end. So Jesus was ready for it, and obviously made the decision from the beginning, and that they knew how it was going to turn out. But that doesn't mean, knowing the path and walking the path, as the saying goes, are two different things. And he walked it in perfection. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an opportunity to receive God's grace. So, yeah, I'm sure there were struggles, and he prayed continually, to have the strength to carry things out, and knowing he was going to be tortured brutally, and then nailed to the cross.
Yeah.
And even
he sweated literally blood.
Yeah.
Because he did not, he asked that this cup be taken away from him. So he had the opportunity, even though he chose not to obviously sin when he was tempted by Satan in the desert, he also was tempted to pass on this whole crucifixion business and say, well, I don't want to do this.
if there's another way. Yeah. And who wouldn't? And who wants to go through tribulation? Right? Who wants to do that?
Would you say it would be a good idea? And I'm going to throw this out there for people, to purchase your book and send a copy of it to their local pastor of their church in case they haven't read it, maybe as a gift.
That would be awesome.
Maybe even anonymously or something, and say, read this and then talk about it.
Yeah, they might. It's a great idea, but there's risk. So you might be asked to leave the church.
Well, thank you. That's why I said, if you're afraid of that, send it anonymously so they don't know who sent it. But the idea, I'm just thinking.
In order to do that, though, here's the trick, because you have to always put a return address on there. So in order to ensure that the book is delivered, you put the pastor's return address on there,
yes,
and then his regular address.
So what my advice would be to flip that around a little bit. So I would give book 2 to the pastor, because they're going to get cognizant dissonance from book 2, because it goes so deep into the Bible, and whereas the other book is drawing on a lot of other sources, and then they may want to read book 2. So I think that might be a better case. And so, like, book 2 is designed for the naysayers that you want to give it to in Christianity, whether they're ministers or just members of the church, and for Christians who want to know you can never cover everything, almost everything that's in the Old Testament about giants, hybrids, the angelic order, the giant wars, and how that all relates to end time prophecy. So
that's a good idea. So what you did is you're writing these books kind of like in Star Wars fashion, where you're saying, well, yeah, the first movie that came out is the first chapter, and then the second movie is chapters 4, 5, and 6. So we go to 4, 5, and 6 first, and then go back to chapter 1. Because once you have a biblical basis for it, then you might be more receptive to the first book.
Yeah. So the first book gives you the larger macro and all the different forces that are going on. The second book gives you everything you need to know biblically to make that case, and so much more. And all the arguments are placed right there. And if people say, well, giant doesn't show up very often in the Old Testament. Well, Nephilim shows up only 3 times as translated into giant, but Rephaim shows up 25 times, twice as a tribe of giants in Genesis 14 and 15. But there's all these other names of tribes that don't go back to the Table of Nations that are giant nations. I'll take those giants back to a specific patriarch, and then I'll cover the hybrids, which are the ones that intermarry with the giants and aren't as tall as the giants, but they're like the Amorites that are 7 to 9 feet tall. And so if people haven't heard of the Makatheme, if they haven't heard of the Pelatheme or the Cheratheme or the Gebalim, and I can go on, there's just so many different names of giant tribes. And I cover them all in the New Testament. It's just going to change your perception of what the Old Testament and the Exodus wars were all about.
Yeah, I really, I can't say enough about the first book. I'm excited about the second one coming out, but I really think people need to read both. And I really think they need to understand that everything that is going on in the world right now, I forget who it was that was quoted as saying there's nothing new under the sun. Like, it was one of the philosophers, but
well, it's also in the book of Ecclesiastics.
Right. So, that's probably where they got it. But
exactly.
The Bible.
Yeah.
But here's another thing, getting back to what Jesus said, and how people are under the mistaken impression that when Jesus came, he kind of like softened his father up for them. He's a nicer guy. He's not really as, do you attribute that to those who actually wrote the New Testament? In other words, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Did these guys maybe not make it clear enough that Jesus was fulfilling the law and not changing it, even though they quoted him as saying that? Do you think they made Jesus out to be a lot nicer, a lot easier going, and made it appear his father is easier going than people thought? Are they to be held responsible for misinterpreting some of Jesus's words and maybe not making it clear enough?
Yeah, I think so. And also to try and, particularly with the polytheists, with the invasions, they don't care as much about Jesus. They care more about his father. And they want to make the God of the Old Testament the evil God, and that they can salvage Jesus as a wise prophet, right? So there's an agenda there. And the churches have not done a good job of explaining who Jesus is as the Word of God, the Logos of Theos. And he's described in John 1 and Colossians 1 as the Word of God who created all things. And he put everything under him, but he's doing it at God's beckoning. So when God said in Genesis 1, that's the Hebrew word amar, where it means to speak or using words and communicating. That's the word. And you also have the Holy Spirit that's there. So you have Elohim that is talked about as the superlative nature of God the Father, or as all three. And in this case, it's all three, because Jesus is working at God's behest as the Word of God when God speaks. And the Holy Spirit is there in Genesis 1:1-2 to renew the earth. That's what all life comes from the Spirit. So when we see Lord God introduced in Genesis 2:4 with the creation of the Adamites, you've got now Jehovah Elohim. And Jehovah is Jesus, Jehovah of the Elohim. So when you see Lord, that's Jehovah. Sometimes it's Adonai, but over 6,000 times it's Jehovah, versus 427 times for Adonai, for my Lord. So it's Jehovah of the Elohim, and he's the one that's going to be working with Noah. He's the one that's going to be working with Abraham as Jehovah. That is Jesus as the Word, and the angel of the Lord, and the angel of the burning bush, the Lord of the burning bush, Jehovah. And so it is Jesus, the pre-existent Jesus, all the way through the Old Testament, that's working with the Adamites.
Yeah.
At God's behest and command. So they're totally on the same page. But you can't say that Jesus is the good God and God the Father, El, is the
Good
evil
cop,
God.
Good cop, bad cop,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
guy comes in and we're gonna condemn you to hell. We're gonna flood the earth, and then
Yeah.
Jesus comes and says,
Yeah.
we don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
If you
So
just,
just so that people understand what I'm talking about, the triune is made up of El or El Elyon, God the Father, just as Jesus instructed us to pray to his Father, Jehovah, the Word, and Ruach, the Spirit. And that's the Elohim. Now, you can also use Elohim as a superlative nature for just for God, but you have to look for that in the context. Typically, when it's saying Elohim for God in the Bible, that's all three at the same time. When it's Jehovah or Jehovah of the Elohim, that's just Jesus. So the whole word of God is the Bible. It's Jesus's word.
Right. We're talking about praying to God and the Our Father as an example. There are those who say that and I think it was Pope Francis who recently tried to change the wording of the Our Father. And so many aspects of the Roman Catholic Mass have undergone so many different changes. First with Vatican II, when it went from Latin to English, and then there's been different interpretations of certain aspects of the ritual of the Mass. But part of the Lord's Prayer says, and I've always wanted to ask somebody about this. I guess you're as knowledgeable as a figure as I can come up with that would know the answer to this. Part of the Our Father says, "And lead us not into temptation." Like, why would you have to ask God, the Father, not to lead you into temptation? It doesn't sound like something he would even consider doing. So why would you have to ask him not to do that?
Yeah, it's within the translation, and you have to understand that words in Greek and Hebrew have several meanings, and so it's actually meant to be in design is to not to have permit temptation to be presented to us, right?
Okay, so
just
just saying, in other words, if you would, God, please, like, keep Satan away from me.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Good one.
But that, but just as with Jesus, Satan is always around him and he's telling him to get behind me, and there's always going to be temptation. So God doesn't lead us to sin.
No, he doesn't. And personally, I like that segment that you said. Just keep Satan away from me, God.
Yeah.
Satan
exactly.
gets behind me. I've used that a whole lot.
Or give me the strength, because you've given me free will. Help me with the strength to fight off the decision to do something bad when I'm under temptation.
Yeah. So, it's like in the Old Testament where you have a couple of passages on David and the census, and you have to put both of them together and put things into context where, in the one passage it says God had David do the census, which is a sin. And then the other passage, it has the devil who caused David to sin. So it's that same sort of context and argument as in lead me into temptation. You have to, the translations into English always aren't perfect, and we have to put all the passages together so that we get a better understanding and what fits directionally with the rest of the Bible. So so it's just one of those things where I think that our teachers in the church could do a better job of taking away some of people's doubts, because there's always these people coming in and trying to drive a wedge in the faith, and they say, well, what about this one line or this one word? And so we should study it, we should be able to defend it, but our church teachers need to be able to provide that to us, and they allow people's faith to weaken because they can't answer some of those questions. And the spurious forces are absolute masters of, and they've been taught how to make those arguments to seed doubt.
Do you think that for example, the Baptists and some of these quote unquote holy roller ministries that talk about fire and brimstone and really put the fear of God into their congregation, maybe they are getting it more right than some of these other denominations of Christianity, because they're also saying, you better shape up?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, again, one of the things in the translations out of Hebrew and Greek is hell has three places conflated into that word. So there is a lake of fire that hell is part of,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
hell is also Hades and Sheol, and it's also where the pit prison is. And there's one other meaning I don't have time to go in and explain, and they should have translated that as separate words. So there is a lake of fire. That's where humans will suffer a second death if you're not going to go into forever, into immortality. But that lake of fire is also there for the fallen angels and the demons to be punished forever, and for those who take the mark of the beast. So there's parts of that that's true. But for most humans, if you're not going to be saved and you're not going to be resurrected, you're just going to have a second death. So you'll be resurrected, judged, second death, as Revelation 20 talks about. So they should be clearer about it. Yes, you would go into that, but you would die instantly on the second death, as opposed to being tortured by that.
Right.
And those who are going to be there forever, it's not going to be a good existence. So make sure you're making the decisions in light of that, and don't do something that might cause you, but it's a high threshold to be one of those people that are chosen not to have the second death. And part of that is sinning against the Holy Spirit, blaspheming against the Holy Spirit, and violations against the laws of creation.
Now, Penny, I'm going to turn this over to you a little bit for just a moment, because you went to see Pastor Bob Joyce this past Sunday, and I've never heard him speak. I've never seen any of his videos. Shame on me. But what was your impression of how he preached the gospel? And do you have any questions for Gary regarding? I guess that his is kind of like a mega church, is it not?
No, it actually isn't. It's a very small church. There are allegations that Bob Joyce is actually Elvis. Apparently, the parishioners that are in there believe that.
Wow.
I'm open to any and all possibilities, because I do know certain things, that he had surgery. So I'm open to the possibility. He was a very good. I shook his hand. He was a very good man, whoever he is, irregardless of past or present. And he just basically put out a call for you to have a personal relationship with Jesus. He did a little bit of music beforehand, and his entire presentation was to glorify God. So I did not find any weirdness about him, or even in his presentation, which I've only seen him once. The people in the church were very loving. They were all spirit filled. It wasn't a charismatic church where people were falling around in the aisles. So I found no fault in him whatsoever, and my genuine feeling was that he's a very good man, whoever he is.
Whoever he is. I'm not familiar with him or his teaching. And I have, there's different opinions on the Bible in a lot of different ways.
He's in Benton, Arkansas, and he's just, it's a very small gathering. And there are some, when I was there were some people there that were patriots. And in the Patriot in the Truth movement, one individual his last name is Ho, and he just restarted the George magazine, and he seems very ardent and another very good people. So I found the people there to be very good, very congruent, very loving, and with personal relationships with God.
And he could be just doing what a lot of churches do, just teaching the good principles about Jesus and things like that. But without the knowledge that he probably should have in terms of what happens with the spirit. And, human spirits sleep. Rephaim spirits do not sleep. So if he is a reincarnation, or he's an avatara thing going on there, maybe somebody should present to him to dig a little bit deeper into the Bible about these other things and make sure he is sure that that's what he is. I would think probably, who knows? But he's teaching, what we do know, he's teaching good things about the Bible, but that aspect, maybe he needs some counseling to be careful with that.
Well,
you?
I,
terms of,
I couldn't even address that because I've only
yeah,
been to his church once. I'm
yeah,
just saying from what
yeah.
I saw,
From what you saw in the teaching, yes, that's
he had
exactly what I was saying.
a very unique and very grounded, uh,
Does he
ability
say it?
to
Does he address the Elvis thing at all? Did he?
He says he's not Elvis.
He's not Elvis. Okay, so he's not
Well,
claiming to be Elvis.
that's helpful. That's good.
Yeah, he says he's not. But the parishioners believe that.
But he did
that
say he's Bob
absolutely
Marley,
is.
didn't he?
He didn't say it was Bob Marley either. It's an unusual church, Gary. It's in Benton,
Yeah.
Arkansas. Look him
Yeah,
up. His
I
name
will.
is Bob Joyce, and
Yeah,
they were just genuinely lovely people.
yeah,
Very open, very warm. And the message was directed to God, not to anything else that that was going on in there. So that's what I liked about it. Not all pastors are great theologians.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And not all have explored as deeply as you have, Gary.
Yep. I definitely
I
recognize.
wish everyone would. All right, we've got just a few minutes left, and I think this is your last appearance before Christmas, because after this it'll be the new year, and we'll be getting closer to your second book. And after the first of the year, I want to start addressing some of the things you're going to be covering in that book. But for now, tell people how they can get the first book, and maybe even pre-order the second.
Sure. The best way to get book 1 or pre-order book 2 is to go to my website. And on the website, which is the Genesis6conspiracy.com, with the number 6conspiracy.com, I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of the first book, and a generous chapter excerpt of all 84 chapters for the second book. And it's going to give you a good idea what the book is about, but it is a small sort of inkling or drops that are part of a larger book, and it is loaded with information. Both books are. So no matter how large the excerpt is, and it's quite large, it's just a small piece of the information. And so you can order off that website to get a signed copy for book 1. And if you're in the US, there's a US page. If you're in Canada, there's a Canadian page. And if you're overseas or anywhere else in the world, I call it overseas, there's a page for the rest of the world, and you can get a signed copy. You can also link over and get from that buy now page, or from the front page, over to Amazon to get the Kindle version of book 1. And also over to Amazon.ca and Amazon.com, and over to BarnesandNoble.com if you wanted to buy it elsewhere. For book 2, you can also pre-order a signed copy off my website. You can't pre-order a Kindle version yet; they haven't released that yet. I have an update for the printing of it here when I'm done as well. And you can also link over to BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com and Amazon.ca to pre-order the printed book as well. And so I got an update from the publisher late last week, and it is now out of the queue for printing, and it's now at the printers. So they're going to beat the release date of March 12th by quite a bit. I don't have an exact date yet for them, but as we get closer. So I'm expecting late December, early January on an optimistic perspective. February would be the absolute latest that it's going to be available. And pre-orders are going very, very well.
As they should.
As it's showing on Amazon.com. It's the fastest selling theological history book, as they've got it labeled on there for the pre-orders. So I think it's doing well on the pre-orders. So yeah, that's the best ways to get a hold of my book. And to get a hold of me as well, you can go contact the author, send me an email if you've got a question or would like more information. And if I've got a document on that, I will send that to you. And I do that at no charge. Takes me 1 to 2 weeks now. I'm cut that down significantly in response time. And as we go into the last couple of minutes here, I just want to remind people that we're going into the Yuletide, as you're going to hear that name, even in the churches. That's a polytheist term. That begins the days of Odin, the horned god, an Azazel type figure. a Hearn type figure, a Cernunnos type figure, a Bacchus, Cern, Pan type figure. And it begins on December the 17th, and that's Odin's hunt. And then you have the 12 days of the Horn God of Christmas that begins on December 21st for 12 days. So those 12 days are a polytheist version of Christmas, and that December 21 is one of the most significant days of the 8 Sabbaths of polytheism that are like the 8 spokes on the wheel that they have of a chariot wheel, or the cycle of the year. And that is the beginning of the Holly King, which is the winter king, and connections obviously into Holly. And in the summer, in June 21, that will be the Oak King. So they have these 2 kings in these 2 woods, and you have Holly, Hollywood, Holly as you're using for yeah. So understand, as we move into that days of the solstice, that is Sol Invictus, leading to the birth of Mithra on December 25, and continuing right through to the new year. This is a season of polytheism. Be aware of that, but do not feel that you can't celebrate the birth of Christ on December 25. That may not be his birth date, because that's the rainy season. So he would have been born in late September, early October, because if he was born in December 25, there wouldn't have been room for Jesus in the stable, because all the animals would have been in the stable. And that's why the shepherds are in the field. That's why the angels visit the shepherds in the field. So it would have been in the dry season there. So, but that doesn't mean you can't celebrate Jesus and Christmas. Just be aware of the rituals. Be aware of that. There's gift giving that comes with the Krampus sort of tradition, and the kidnapping of children to take to Sheol and to Hades. But you can also look at what St. Nicholas actually did in terms of giving gifts. That used to be on December the 6th, but they moved it. Henry VIII actually moved it to December 25. So gift giving is fine, but just be careful of all of the polytheist influence that has invaded all of our Christian celebrations.
Well, I'd say gift giving is fine as long as you give the Genesis 6 conspiracy as a gift. Then you're going to be okay. Gary, I could have you on 5 days a week for 3 hours a day. You are just fantastic. You're fantastic. We love you. God bless you. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Feel better. And we will see you right after the first of the year, and get into the new book and some other things as we continue. It's really an honor that you appear on our show. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, and have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Gary Wayne here on the Awake Nation. The Genesis 6 Conspiracy is the book. Genesis, the number 6 conspiracy.com is the website where you can order. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Brent Thomas. I want to remind you, we're going to be off. We'll be here all of this week and all of next week, but then we're going to take a couple of days off, and here's all about it.
The Awake Nation, with co-hosts David Zublick and Penny Lee Shepard, welcomes December. Get out your pens, mark your calendars, and save these dates. The following are the Awake Nation December vacation dates. But first, holiday recipes gone terribly wrong.
Treats. Leslie on tap this morning.
Yeah, it's not supposed to look like that.
There's a whole story here. So what is this?
Okay, so this, it's like I didn't want to bake it. I've been busy, so I didn't want to make anything, but my family was all freaking out. Okay, this is what I wanted to do. This was plan A. This is my favorite Christmas thing.
Well, then,
here's the Safeway wrapper.
Oh, thank you.
It's Christmas cake.
Fruit cake, yeah.
Okay,
from Safeway.
So that's what you want to do.
But my family's all freaking out because you need to make something. Everybody's making something. So they all got together and they sent me this recipe, and I'm going to make you guys try it. So this is artichoke dip. Okay, so you think that that's okay, right? Is that too much for you, George?
That's a lot. Why me? I can't do this.
How does it smell, Scott?
It's like vinegar or something.
I thought it smelled like a barn. But why are we being rude? We have
No, it didn't work out. I'm telling you right now. This did not work out. It's artichoke
Too
dip.
much. Too much. Is it edible? Yeah, at first I'm like, well, it's not that bad, but the vinegar.
But there's no vinegar in there. So here's what happens.
That's like all that I can taste is vinegar.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so like it's got.
I'm not trying to be rude here.
It's okay. I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Oh.
It's artichoke dip, but something went terribly wrong. Okay, so first of all,
How are you doing that?
Your burns.
there's no vinegar. There's no vinegar. Do you think something is off? Like, do you think maybe the artichokes are off? Well, okay, I didn't have a lemon, so I just cut up an orange and put that in there. And then I didn't know what spices to put in, so I put celery, salt, and oregano in it.
See, this is where
And
the little bits of chemistry play in, Leslie. Things didn't combine properly.
So, how are you enjoying it, Amber?
It burns.
For all you Christmas cooks, be safe in the kitchen and check your recipes twice. And now get out your pencils and save these dates. Awake Nation will be on vacation Monday, December 24 through Wednesday, December 27. We will be returning Thursday, December 28th through Friday, December 29. While you're at it, save this date too. Awake Nation will also be on vacation Monday, January 1, 2024. Happy New Year! We will be returning Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. There you have it. Those are our holiday dates for December and January 1st. On behalf of the Awake Nation, with co-hosts David Zublick and Penny L.A. Shepard, we wish you safe and happy holidays. And season's greetings from the Awake Nation.
Gary was talking about Krampus when he was talking about the holidays. I think in many families, some of these kids have to worry more about Grampus. Grampus is a little weirdo sometimes and a bit of a pervert. Let's bring in our next guest, Brent Thomas, here on the Awake Nation, host of the Paranormal Portal. And Brent, it's always an honor to have you on. How are you today?
I'm doing as well as I know how. I'm really glad to see you guys, both. It's always an honor. It's been a lot of fun, but I just got done getting my tail kicked by some kind of massive virus, and so.
Oh wow, you too?
No.
Yeah, it just happened.
Personally, you know what my remedy is for the viruses?
What's that?
Eat a lot of gingerbread cookies.
Penny was just telling me she ate a bunch of ginger. Peppermint bark is what does it for me in the holidays.
Oh.
I love peppermint bark with chocolate on the bottom and little sprinkles on top. Oh, God.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. Whatever it was, it was a full hardcore week of high fevers and not breathing well. And
wow,
it was horrible. But I'm here. This is actually the first time I've talked in combined sentences for about a week. So we'll see how this goes.
Wow. So you haven't done your show then?
I didn't. I took a week off my own show last week, which I've never done in the 8 years since I started.
We're honored that you're here today, and we'll try to make it as easy as possible on you. We'll let you pick the topic and just tell us what's on your mind.
Well, I was going to talk to you guys about there's a lot of hubbub about cryptids right now. Cryptozoology has been I think it's a really growing field in the paranormal. I mean, everybody's heard of the ghost stories and everybody's been seeing lights in the skies forever. But I think the proliferation of people beginning to see these creatures, these animals or whatever exactly they are, we aren't sure, but just kind of coming out of the woodwork. And so, it begs kind of two schools of thought. Either A, there's more of them, or B, people are more willing to have the conversation now than ever. And I personally think it's probably a B thing, but oftentimes the critics of cryptozoology would say everybody's got a camera. Why don't we have photos of this stuff? I mean, everybody's carrying these megapixel cameras everywhere they go. And I thought we would take at least a little bit of time addressing that, and then also addressing the proliferation of hoaxes, which go hand in hand with all of this. Because
and now with the what you can do with the AI and Photoshop and all this other stuff, there's a lot of people posting stuff. I can't tell what's real and what isn't anymore.
No, who can? I mean, but here's another thought. When you're seeing something that has presented you with a flight or fright response, you're not necessarily going to whip your phone out and say, hold on just a sec. Let me videotape that while I'm running in terror.
Well, hold on. Is this in frame? Yeah.
Right.
No. But that's the technology, is that people just think, well, it's out there. It should be getting captured. And I really do think there is some really valid pieces of information out there that have been captured. But I think there's a whole inundation of the fakes, like you're saying. Of course, the AIs are a big one. Suddenly, I don't know if you guys are on social media much, but on Facebook, there was just this influx of people finding these jars buried in their backyard full of these 1800s photos of their ancestors next to Bigfoot, just standing there for a pose. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
I have seen I haven't seen that, but I've seen pictures of people posting allegedly of the Nephilim. You know, some guy walking alongside some 14-foot guy,
right?
But they're not to be fake, but
sure, yeah. Those are the ones that I'm talking about. They're all in that sepia tone, you know, that old photography.
That's easy to do these days too, right? You can even make pictures talk. So
I can do that.
Yeah, but I think the weirdest part of that was that, for me, it was like, obviously these images just came out of nowhere and suddenly they're everywhere. But I think the thing that surprised me the most was the amount of people that were ready to jump on board. You know, it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Great photographic evidence. It's like, no, that's not amazing. This is not good.
It's just a clip from Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah, exactly. and it's a bit frustrating, because I think in all of this, you do have to weigh it with logic. And because I think there are a lot of people, and myself included, who are on this journey of discovery, of understanding. And I think you do have to challenge things like a skeptic. And if you don't, you're not helping the movement at all.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, are there some of the more interesting ones that you have been delving into, like on your show, that you have found to be more credible than others? Like, have you seen some things or some videos that you can say, oh, this looks like it really is pretty real, and or photographs or that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a few pieces of video evidence that, and so there's some of the oldest stuff out there. Of course, the famous Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967, Bluff Creek, California, where Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson did their famous horseback trip and were able to capture 16 seconds or so of raw video of this creature. And of course, there was the counterclaims that were going on of a gentleman named Bob Hieronymus and others. Oh, I was the one in the suit. I was the one in the suit. And yet, in all the years since then, they've never produced the suit. Like, they've produced a suit that clearly isn't the one. But one thing that I really am excited about in terms of weighing the evidence on these is there's a new approach been going on, and I know from a person I only know as Thinker Thunker, but he's a YouTube channel, and he's been weighing Bigfoot evidence for years. But he's come up with a really interesting formula regarding body proportions, and basically taking primate body proportions versus human body proportions, and showcasing the difference, and why someone like Patty couldn't have been a person in the suit, which in this case Bob Hieronymus, because in side-by-side photos, taking body proportions from real landmark parts like the shoulders, the elbows, where you can't fake it. You can't fake the distance from your shoulder to the elbow. You can add extenders after the elbow, but you can't fake this part, or the way the head mounts on the front of the torso, and so many things like that. And then also lengths of these appendages. Now, these are kind of, I don't know if he calls them the golden ratios, but I always refer to them as like the golden ratios, because what happens is with any person on the face of the earth, any human being, your legs are going to be about 20% longer than your arms or something like that. Whereas with gorillas, chimpanzees, and many other of the other primates, they're about identical. The distance between the shoulder and the wrist and their hip to their ankle is almost identical, along with torso length. So he's been able to go through a lot of these footages and go, and this one probably isn't real because these are very human proportions. And this one might be real. Barry has a good point that it might be because it doesn't have those human proportions. And so I think that kind of a discovery and that kind of methodologies, I think, really help to substantiate this stuff and to give us something to weigh it against, you know?
You know, we've had some people on the program. One guy, and we may have mentioned this when I had you on the last time, but I'm going to talk about him and then one other person. And this one guy, I can't remember his name, Penny, but he's the one that had all the cell phones.
Oh, right.
He had a bunch of his bedroom, which is I think where he was doing the show from, had all these cell phones that were not connected to Wi-Fi, but he claimed they were picking up. What were they picking up? Like sounds and
aliens or spirits.
And then he claimed that he had video of a cryptid that was crawling in his backyard, but it clearly looked like a cat. Okay. So I mean, we never had him on again after that. But we've also had a guest on the program who we have a lot of admiration and respect for. I don't know if you've ever had him on your show, Paul Dale Roberts.
Yes, no. And Brian Bowden.
And Brian Bowden. But Paul Dale Roberts was on the show the other day, I believe, and he had a picture of what he claimed was from it was a clothing store. And somebody in the attic of the clothing store had taken a picture of what was supposed to be a ghost. I looked at the photograph. Paul Dale Roberts wasn't saying it was a ghost, but he was presenting it as, you know, this is what they shot. It looked clearly to me like somebody just took a shot of a mannequin.
Mannequin, yeah.
You know, that sort of thing. And he had some other things. And
he's a forensic investigator. He was also a PI. And he was also in the military. He's written something like, I don't know, 78 books, David?
Wow. Yeah, 78 books. And so it's so hard to really, you know, determine. But I do believe in Bigfoot. I really do. I think that is one so-called cryptid, an entity that really does exist. I don't know if anyone has captured the real thing on video or not, but I believe it does exist.
Sure. Yes, there's a theory that Bigfoot has some alliance with UFOs.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. And here's my position on that. And I guess it gets down to to make an association like that, it's a pretty broad spectrum kind of claim with very
I'll give
little.
You an example. There's an individual that we personally know who said that he and his brother were abducted. They're very quiet. They live very off-grid. And there's also another individual, his name's John Cross, who says that he has the Bigfoot on his family, but there's also allegations of alien abductions with UFO craft. So that would be a primary. I know this. I know these people personally.
Sure.
And, you know, they don't want to come on air. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to live a quiet life. But there is some kind of an alliance with the UFOs and the cryptids. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether it's an alliance or if they're just getting studied like we are, you know. And I had a witness on the show once, and she talked about her abduction experience and how she woke up in the proverbial room with very little detail, except she was on a table and was kind of sat there, really unable to move, but was able to look across the room to another table where on that table sitting was a Bigfoot, and it was being examined as well. And she said she was able to look over and they made eye contact, and she could see the wisdom in this creature and the fact that it was, you know, it was connecting with her in maybe an ethereal manner or telepathic manner, but they were both she felt like they were both peers in this experience. Like it wasn't that she was the only odd person out, but
Right.
and it stands to reason, because I've certainly talked to dozens of true, what I believe are very true and valid cases of people being abducted, and having, some of them are horrible situations,
Yes.
and others are seem more benign, but it does stand to reason then, if they are here and they are looking at us, why wouldn't they also look at the other things? I mean, they also apparently tear apart cows and other animals, and it's hard to understand what are they doing that for, but they seem to be very intrinsically interested in the fauna and biology of our planet.
Do
And
you
so,
think that the Wookiee from Star Wars is predicated upon Bigfoot?
I
You mean Chewbacca?
I think
Yes.
it could be.
Is he a Wookiee?
Yeah, that's kind of Wookiee. It's like,
Is he a Wookiee?
yeah,
Like
Chewbacca.
my mother-in-law, we took my mother-in-law to Disney World because it was her 85th birthday, and she wanted to, she hadn't been there in 30 years. And so for Christmas, my wife found a talking Chewbacca, and we're going to get that to her as a present.
I hope she's not watching the show, because now you just spoiled it.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't watch my show. She thinks I'm a nut. But I would too. She's a smart woman.
But I think there is the possibility that there could be a manner of extraterrestrial being that's very much what these things are. But it also seems like there's something else, or maybe there's that much of a biological diversity, because of course there are claims of extraterrestrial visitors that look just like us, but they're clearly not us. You look at the Nordics and
here's another thought. Okay, so we know that they take them for genetic experimentation and implementation of the DNA so that they can generate. I'm saying we know, but let's just put it out there that they can. So would it be possible that they would want to take the strength of a Bigfoot and mix it with the strength of the human, and then with their species as well?
It's so funny that you say that, because years ago I had this idea. It's like, because I keep thinking about, with all of the evidence out there of people seeing Bigfoot, of people having face-to-face encounters, of people hitting them with their car, finding, even DNA evidence that's kind of being overly questioned and subjected to a lot of ridicule. But there seems to be at least somewhat of an effort by some organized bodies to keep this information out of the mainstream and out of our objective understanding of the biology of our world. And I'm like, why? But then it occurred to me, and this is my X-Files. If you got an X-Files theme, play it now. This is my X-Files take on this.
I don't have that. What I do have a sound effect here. Where is it? The old theremin.
Yeah. Perfect. So here's my X-Files take on this. I think it's been pretty well established in World War II, Nazi Germany, and following World War II in Russia, and probably our side was doing the same thing. But there was definitely a movement to try to crossbreed human beings with gorillas and other.
Yes, I think they're still doing that.
Right. So here's
what do they call those? Like chimeras or chimeras or something?
Chimeras. Yes, they're doing genetic hybridization and normalizations. They've been doing it for, I don't know, a century.
So take this possibility as maybe a motivator. So there have legendarily been cases, and there's allegedly ongoing cases where there's been human women have been impregnated and actually created a viable offspring. So there does appear to be a species out there that, at least on the surface of it, looks like it's it's genetically viable for crossbreeding. And
I think it's Joe Biden, but that's just me.
Don't breed the Biden breed. Don't do it.
Come on, man.
They will just be like retarded.
Right, exactly.
So, with international treaties and such having been formed against that, it supposedly precludes human crossbreeding with other entities. But what if there was an entity out there that wasn't officially real? Does that circumvent some of those treaties? And
Yes, exactly. So, like, have you seen the movie Splice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. Creepy stuff. But
Yes.
but I think you're right. I think that's, there certainly seems to be plenty of suggestion that there is some kind of organized effort to keep this stuff out of the mainstream. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that people are actually having encounters. There is, I think Melba Ketchum's study on the DNA is worth more than just the real passive dismissal that it's been receiving, because I think she did some really great things. And it's just not the popular opinion in the science world, so she's not going to get any credit. But I mean, these things are out there. There's no question. And even in the case of, if we only had anecdotal evidence, if all we had were anecdotal evidences of people that have seen them and experienced them, that's still thousands and thousands of reports of a huge cross section of humanity, from different professions to different backgrounds to different ethnicities. I mean, that's got to be worth a lot more than just folktale,
Yes.
What's the strangest thing you've ever seen?
Ooh, boy. I don't think I've ever seen any cryptid that I can remember, but I think that probably the strangest, well, there's a lot of correlated events that just stacked up. I think last time I was on, I talked about the dream of my dad calling me on my mom's phone, and then how it lined up to,
Right.
his TV turning on, playing my show, playing my episode of me doing that. That is a culmination of events. But I think probably the strangest thing I ever saw was with my own eyes right in front of me, was when I saw the UFO was definitely one of them, as well as the chandelier pulling out of the ceiling, as well as seeing things move, just objects. I was reaching down to grab a pen on the floor, and then it just shot away from me. It's like, oh, well, that's not what you normally see. So I and I think a lot of psychic events like premonitions, those really blow me away, because it really speaks to the dynamic nature of our reality and how little of it we're tuned into. And that's what I think is so exciting.
In terms of like strange creatures, have you ever seen like something that you could not identify? And I'm talking about not something that somebody sent you or discussed on your show, but maybe personally, like I've never seen a weird animal or anything like that. I'm curious to talk to someone who has.
No, I wish I'll say this guardedly. I wish I could say that I've seen one, but then again, I'm glad that I haven't seen one as well, because once you get to that point of it's no longer a subjective idea, it becomes a factual reality. It changes your world, so suddenly taking the garbage out at 10:30 at night doesn't sound so fun,
Right. Wait till it's
Yeah, although you could see some regular animal out there that would be more dangerous. I mean, you could see like some sort of a pit bull or some weird animal, or a coyote or something that could pose more danger to you than that. So I don't know.
That's a good take, and I don't begrudge you that. It's just that, at least with canines and stuff, we've had quite an extensive history of kind of knowing what to expect from a canine, but we don't really know what to expect from a 10-foot tall primate man standing at the end of your driveway. It's I mean, it's all a bucket of unknowns.
Can you imagine taking that and militarily cloaking it?
Oh God, yeah.
So that you can see it. One weirdo thing happened to me. You guys just brought to my mind when I was at Willow Creek Church. I went back to get my briefcase from the car, and I had my keys in my hand. And I went to go open the car door, and a pen showed up in my hand.
Just showed up. Wow.
Yes, and it wasn't. I only use certain pen. I use a black pen, a black ink. I like the Z grip medium zebra, so I buy these by the bucketful. But this pen showed up, and it was from a dentist.
Wow.
And Joseph Mengele, many people don't realize, was a dentist. That was one of the things. He used to wear teeth around his neck. And of like some of his victims. Anyway, I had my keys in my hand, right? And I went to go open the door. I put the key in the door, and a pen appeared in my hand. Now, there's nothing up my sleeve. It's not a pen that I would have.
Sure.
And I just like, it really freaked me out. I just looked at it. I like examined it really good. When I got into the church, I looked at it. I looked up in the sky. I looked around. It's like, how did that happen? How did it materialize? I'm left-handed. I had my keys in my hand, nothing else in my hand.
No weird sensation when it would happen?
No, I just I went to go get my briefcase out of the car because I realized that I'd left it in the car. And I put the key into the car and withdrew it. And there was a pen in my hand. And I was like, what the H?
That's crazy.
Where did this come from?
They want you to write something. That's a clear. They want you to write. I'm serious.
I was writing. But it was just, yes, exactly, David. So I think I'm going to be writing. I need to write on our own blog, and I also need to write with Christi and other people that want me to write. And I'm also going to ghost write, if you'll excuse the phrase, for my best friend Susie. So
there you go. Well, listen, we're just about out of time for today, but tell people where they can find you, Brent, and where they can watch your shows.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can find all the information about the shows on paranormalportal.net. And that's kind of the nerve center for all things of the social media, the YouTube, the podcast, etc. So that's a great place to start. And thank you guys for having me on. I'm glad my voice held up.
I hope you recover real quickly and have a joyous holiday. And we look forward to talking to you again real soon. And it's such an honor to have you on the show. You always have such great things to talk about, and you have a very soothing voice and a very excellent delivery, and you're extremely intelligent, and it's really an honor. So thank you.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Yeah, thank you guys. And happy Christmas and holidays to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Brent Thomas here on the Awake Nation. I really like him a lot. I mean, he's level-headed, down to earth, and we have some go ahead.
Well, I like his voice a lot. It's calming.
I know. Speaking of calming voices, you know who else has a very nice calming voice was, of course, our previous guest before Brent, and that, of course, was Gary Wayne. And he explains the Bible and Jesus, I think, really very well.
I think so, too.
Here's someone who does not.
By the way, the same stable genius that said the biggest problem we had in the Revolutionary War is we didn't have enough airports. Whoa.
Yeah, that was Biden explaining.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
He talks and I'm like, I have no words. I don't. It's like if you had any holy water, just throw it on him.
Well, yeah, it'll probably burn. All right. Time to bring in our next exciting guest, Lindbloom. To Be a King, author of that great book and some others as well. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing? I really was enjoying your last guest. I really got to have a conversation with him to get him on. I don't know if I told you this, but I'm partnering up with someone to start a new YouTube channel. It's called Dragonstorm, Ancient Myth, Legend, and Lore. And we're addressing like all these ancient myths and legends from around the world. The guy who's co-hosting with me, he wrote the book called Dragonstorm. It's a really good story, interactive books. Like you can look up QR codes and websites while you're in the book to help you find clues and stuff. And he's a super smart guy. He's a New York lawyer, but wrote this great book. This book's kind of going viral. He's got like 1,000 reviews on Goodreads. It's just really cool. So we decided to team up and start this show. And so your last guest would be a great guest to kind of have on.
Just contact info.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did send it to you before. Did you lose it?
No, I should still have it. Thank you. I think I messaged him. I never heard back. I'll have to hit him up again.
Well, he has been ill. He got sick.
Yeah. He had a bad cold.
Me too. As soon as I got back from New York, I think I told you I went to New York for an interview. Yeah. And I like literally within like 2 days, I got sick, and I think I had COVID. I still have it. I sound stuffy and nasally. Me and my wife, we both got it, and we've been sick for like 2.5 weeks. It's crazy. It's not a really horrible cold, like miserable, but you're just stuffed up and congested, and it's in your chest, and it's just kind of, it sucks. But listening to that guy, I have a story I'd like to share with you.
Yeah, you do.
Which is a pretty remarkable story. I don't know if I can call it a Bigfoot encounter. Certainly was something. Now, so me and my wife spend a lot of time in the far north of Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Every summer we go up there trout fishing. I go steelhead fishing in the spring. We go to really, really remote areas. I mean, I'm talking remote, where you're like, it's like 12 miles down a 2-track road just to get off the highway. And the nearest town, even from there, is, like 40 miles away, or if that, maybe more. Some of it's just there's nothing, right? So we spent a lot of time out there. So one year, I found this really remote area when I first got out of prison in the middle of nowhere. What's the river called? The Carp River. I found it on Google Maps, went back there. There was salmon in there. So I knew there was steelhead. I went back like the next year in the spring for some steelhead.
The Carp River was the Milky River in St. Clair Shores. Remember that?
Yeah. No, not that particular Carp River, but there was lots of carp in Lake St. Clair. I used to snag them all the time.
Yeah.
So me and my wife, I go out there, I catch a nice big steelhead in the afternoon, and we cook it for dinner, it's a giant rainbow trout. That's what a steelhead is. So we're cooked dinner. I think we had steak and fish. And then I wanted to go down to the river to try to catch some brown trout at night. They're more active at night. So there's this like hill that goes down about, 30 yards, kind of this sandy slope down to the river. You can't really do a lot of casting because it's in the dark, and the river's only 20 feet wide. So you're going to get branches and stuff. But a couple holes right there. So I'm casting. I think I missed one. My wife is on the top of this hill, and I think we had a glass of wine with dinner. It's about midnight, so she's kind of getting tired and half dozing out by the fire. Fire's crackling. It's a nice, beautiful, warm night. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I hear kabloom, and a rock hits the river about maybe 25 yards away from me, upstream actually. And I yell up to my wife. I'm like, yo, did you just throw a rock? And she's like, no, did you throw a rock? I said, no. I said, are you messing with me? She says, are you messing with me? I said, I'm not messing with you. I didn't do nothing. So I'm sitting there running through my data bank in my mind of all the things that could be. Could it be a beaver slap, because sometimes the beavers will get scared and slap their tail, and it didn't sound like that. Sometimes, it could have been a rock rolling down the riverbank and dropping in, but it didn't sound like that. It sounded like kabloom, something hit right in the middle of the river. So I'm just thinking, maybe in life there's just weird anomalies that happen, like maybe it was a dead branch that just happened to fall off from a tree above and land just the right way. Couldn't have been, it didn't sound like a fish. Sometimes steelhead will gulp air, kind of jump up and gulp air, but it didn't sound like that. I've heard all these things, dozens of times in my life. Wasn't nothing recognizable. So I'm just thinking, well, it's just one of those weird anomalies, right? So about 5 minutes later, if that, 3 minutes later, all of a sudden, kabloosh, a rock hits the water about 10 yards from me, right? Big rock, probably the size of a softball or something like that. I turn around and look up the hill at my wife. I said, honey, did you throw a rock? And this is her exact words. And my wife doesn't curse. She's a good Christian woman. She goes, Gunner, get the F up here right now. I mean, she was scared. Get the F up here right now. So I come shooting up the hill, like basically throw my rod. I grab this big machete. I'm unarmed. I'm a felon, so I can't have a gun. I have a BB gun, but I have a big machete. And I grab a frying pan. And dude, I'm not kidding you. I start screaming and yelling, boom, 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 banging this pot and pan together like this machete and pan, trying to make as much noise as I can. And I'm yelling, I'm the baddest mother effer out here. Come get some. You want some? And like screaming.
Have you been in my bedroom?
Yeah. My wife had never seen me scared. She had never seen me like upset like that. And she said, it was like, the hairs on my neck stood up watching you because I knew you were scared. And she's like, I just never heard anything like that. It was a real quiet night. So there was Like you could hear me. I guarantee you could hear me for miles and out in the wilderness. This is my echoing. Nothing. So I don't hear nothing. So
nothing.
We're sitting there freaking out. I don't hear anything. And I'm thinking about it like, what could this have been? Okay. Now, hypothetically, if the guy's like a Navy SEAL and he's got night vision glasses, even he couldn't sneak up on me in the woods. I'm a deer hunter. I'm in the woods. I'm a hunter. I'm, an outdoorsman. I know what it sounds like to move in the woods, especially at night when it's pitch black. You just can't move quietly. I would hear somebody sneaking up from probably 75 to 100 yards away. No problem. Whatever this was got within 30, 40 yards of me, or less, and threw a rock at me or into the water to try and scare me or spook me, whatever. So there's just nothing in humanity that could have snuck up that close
Did you ever
and
see
done
Predator?
that. A predator could do it, like
Did
a
you ever
bear.
see Predator?
No, he's talking about
The movie Predator?
Yes, I did see the movie Predator. Right, exactly. So I don't
Swamp
know.
Thing.
But certain animals have stealth mode. Deer can actually be moving through the woods and you can hear them crunch, 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 crunch. And then they get hit downwind of you, your scent trail. And the second they hit you downwind, they're able to go into silent mode. I've watched them do it. It's incredible. It's truly remarkable to see a deer that's going crunch, 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 crunch. And all of a sudden he winds you. And all of a sudden, the way they move their hoof, they kind of slide it into each step so they don't step on leaves or twigs. They know exactly what they're stepping on, and they can avoid making sound. I've watched them just go poof right in front of me. I've had them do that. Now, a bear has soft paws and they can move pretty quietly. But whatever the case is, there's nothing in nature that I could think of could move that silently to do it. And keep in mind, I'm 12 miles. I'm like 40 miles from the nearest settlement and 12 miles off the highway in the middle of this hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Chippewa National Forest. I mean, just thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres, like 100 square miles of wilderness. So I'm like, what the F? So this is where it gets crazy. This is where it's even crazier. So the next day, I don't know how we ended up sleeping that night, but we weren't too uneasy, on edge. Sure. So the next morning we decide, let's leave. We don't want to be here. This is creepy. This is really weird, right? So we start breaking camp. We're leaving a day or two early to go home, whatever. We actually call this spot Camp Bigfoot now. So as we're packing up, breaking our tent down and breaking all our stuff down, right? All of a sudden, we hear this loud crash about 40, 50 yards away in the woods. Just a loud crash. And then we hear something running off. It sounds bipedal. It doesn't sound like a bear that would kind of gallop. This is something runs away into the woods. I don't know what the crash was. And my mind is like, maybe it climbed a tree and a tree fell over. Maybe it pushed a dead stump over. But right away, I grab my machete and I kind of go running in that direction. And my wife's like, you're not leaving me here. No way. Because I said, wait here. I'm going to see if I can see something. She's like, no way. I'm coming with you. So we don't see nothing. It's freaks us out. So we hurry up and pack and get out of there and leave. This is where it gets even more unbelievable, man. So clearly something's happening here. The next week, I end up going up there with my cousin and my godsons, right? My two godsons.
You went
and I tell them this story, right? And I don't think they believe me because I tell them what happened. And I'm like, these guys don't believe me. They think I'm full of crap. They think I'm just trying to scare them and, mess with them, which I'm not. I'm telling them it happened. So we end up having a big dinner, food, going to bed. Everybody goes to sleep. They're all in one big tent. I'm in my own tent. And I can hear all three of them snoring. All of them, even the kid. It's like a trio of snoring. I'm just about to fall asleep. I got my machete laying next to me and my BB pistol. And all of a sudden, I was just about to fall asleep and I kind of feel it more than I hear it. I hear that same, and I right away, because we're only 10 feet from the river. Like we're literally 10 feet from the riverbank. And I snap awake and I go, Johnny, you guys hear that? Johnny, Vitor, Luigi, you guys hear that? Nobody's awake. Nobody's paying attention. I was like, you guys got to be kidding me. You didn't hear that? Nothing. So I lay there for like 10 minutes. I'm starting to fall asleep again. Like, man, maybe it's my mind's playing tricks on me. And all of a sudden, this time, kabloosh, I hear it again. And I yell, these guys, you guys hear that? None of me wakes up. Nobody wakes up. I wake up in the morning and I tell them what happened, and they don't believe me. They think I'm full of crap. So all I'm saying is there at that particular spot on another day when I was there, I remember, like, I go really remote into the wilderness down these streams, trout fishing and steelhead fishing. I mean, really remote. And on that particular spot one day, I was there by myself. I went walking downstream about 200 yards, and I got a really weird feel, man. Like, there was a strange smell that I didn't recognize, and it seemed too quiet. It was kind of creepy. It was just weird. And the only time I've ever turned around and said, you know what, I'm going to go back. I don't like this spot because I don't feel right. It's the only time that ever happened. And then this is when this, encounter happened like a year later, whatever. And it was just creepy ass stuff, man. I just wanted to share that because I don't know.
I appreciate that. That is, and you never saw what it was.
No.
But there was something moving in it. Well, you know what?
Something threw rocks at me.
Something. That's what I mean. It wasn't just. Yeah. I mean, it was obviously something was attacking you. And
or I don't know if it was attacking.
It wanted to get your attention.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that it was there.
So Penny, this is what you're gonna appreciate this because you always like when I talk about my books and my writing. I have the plans to write a book about a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, and it's going to be told through the eyes or the perspective point of view of the Sasquatch. So this is an interesting story. I've already mapped it out in my mind. It's going to be really remarkable. So this is a Sasquatch family, mother and father and a son, right? And what ends up happening is the mother ends up being killed by a bear or something, and so the father has it, and the kid, the young Sasquatch baby, when he's young, like a teenager, he gets attacked by the bear while his mother's getting attacked, and he gets this big slash on his face. He's got this big nasty scar, right? And the crazy part is there's this kid out in the woods with his father. They're camping, and he's kind of like all into like the whole Bigfoot thing, but nobody really believes him. He had been in a car accident, so he's got a big scar on his face, which makes him very unique. So he's out in the woods with his father when he's about 8, 9, 10 years old, and he's poking around, kind of like where I was just talking about, and he sees a young Bigfoot, and they lock eyes with each other, and they like, oh my God, like he sees the human's got a scar, and the human kid sees this Sasquatch got a scar. Then the father grabs him and they run off, and the kid comes back and tells his dad what he saw, and his dad doesn't really believe him. So for the rest of his life, this kid becomes obsessed he grows up to be a Sasquatch hunter. He believes in Bigfoot because he saw one. So now he's looking like all over the world, but he keeps going back to that one spot, right? Now, while he's doing that in his like the human perspective, the Sasquatch grows up to be an adult, and his whole life he is just trying to find a mate because there's just not many out there. There's so few of these Bigfoots out there. He has spent his whole life wandering around hundreds of square miles of wilderness just to try and find a female. And there's been a couple times where he almost did, and then the one got scared and ran off. So there's all this drama from the perspective of the Sasquatch. But he actually is very curious about humans because he saw a human. So now he kind of goes around human dwellings, and people have seen them and like it's scared. So there's kind of this hype about there's a Sasquatch in this particular area. Meanwhile, the kid who saw him, his whole life is set up to try and find this Sasquatch. He believes he's there because he saw him, right? So years later, when he's all over the world trying to find one, and he can't find proof or evidence, he goes, I'm going to return back to this spot. And meanwhile, the Sasquatch has been like hundreds of square miles to try and find a mate. He's encountered a few other Sasquatches, but they were mated up, or there was other males or whatever. He's just he does the tree knocking. You see the whole story. The book would be this Sasquatch out there trying to find a female mate, and he tree knocks and he calls and he wanders around, and it's the drama of his life where he fights off mountain lions and bears, and he's just trying to eat and survive. How does he survive in the winter? You know what I'm saying? When his father dies, like, what does he do with them? Does he bury it so the animals can't eat them? Is that the reason why we don't find evidence of Sasquatch in the wood? Because they're smart enough to bury it. They're super intelligent, maybe not as intelligent as humans, but they're intelligent enough. And here's the thing. I'll tell you this. If I wanted to vanish into the wilderness, I could go into the wilderness, pack a big backpack, a machete, even a gun. I don't even need a gun. And I could walk into the wilderness and you never see me again, because I could go into the wilderness.
You know how to survive. And
I know how to survive, but imagine an animal that's raised out there. Here's the thing. I've only seen a couple of bears in my whole life in the wilderness, but there's a lot of them out there. I've never found a dead bear body. I've only seen glimpses of a couple bears, and there's thousands of them. So the thing is, if this is a super rare species and they're just not out there and they're smart enough to know how to avoid humans, because just like a deer, if you ever watch deer in the woods, they learn from their parents. They learn from their mother. If the mother like looks up and like tail flickers and she's looking towards something because she smells something, the young ones all look up and they do exactly what she does. And they learn, and they're super hyper vigilant and aware. And they have heightened senses. They can smell way better than us, hear way better than us, see way better. So imagine if you had an advanced like humanoid species that had soft paws that could walk really quietly, that a smell of a bloodhound, the hearing of a deer. They could avoid humanity if they wanted, because when a human pulls into the wilderness in a car, you can hear that car coming from a quarter mile away. And if you want to avoid that human, you just go farther into the woods. People don't venture off the trail. Nobody ventures into the woods. They might go along the river trout fishing or something. But if you just go straight off the trail or the road into the wilderness, if you go a mile, the only time there will ever be humans there, ever, will be about once every 100 years when they log it. That's it. And of course, when a logging crew comes through, a Sasquatch can hear them coming from a mile away, and they get out of Dodge and they go somewhere else. So if they want to avoid humans.
You do know that the Travis Walton story, which Tracy Torme produced, he's coming back on the show, was that Travis was a logger in Snowflake, Arizona, when they took him.
Well, in Michigan, this is a true story. Years ago in the 1800s, when they were logging northern Michigan, they made the loggers sign a contract that said, if you see a Sasquatch or type of being, that you have to keep it secret and you can't tell anyone. And the reason for that is the loggers knew that if there was a new endangered species was found in the woods, that the DNR and the government would put a stop on all the logging. So they were like, they didn't want to lose their money from logging. So like people had to sign a contract. Now all these Indians, Chippewa Indians and stuff, all have legends up there of Sasquatch. All of them. They've all and they've been passing these down for hundreds or thousands of years. So I mean, who knows? I'm just saying, if something is intelligent enough like a human, I could avoid. And I don't have heightened sense. I don't have a great sense of smell. I don't have a great sense of nothing. But if I wanted to, I'm intelligent. So if I want to go in the woods and vanish, nobody would ever see me, ever. For the rest of my life, I could avoid humans. Now imagine if like something was raised like a deer or a bear to avoid humans, to be terrified of humans. The very smell and sight of a human sends them booking through the woods. And they just go miles. If they see a car coming through the woods, which they may never see every year or two, they run miles and miles. They might go 5, 6, 7, 10 miles just to get away from it, because they're scared, because their parents taught them to be scared of humans. Somehow they were able to communicate, humans are dangerous, they're bad, they will kill us, they will hurt us, whatever. And that probably dates back to the Indians, because the Indians probably had bow and arrows or whatever, and spears, and probably killed these things, when they encountered them, because they were scared or whatever the case is. So for thousands of years, the Sasquatch has been avoiding humans. And that's true. Up in northern Michigan, where I spend a lot of time, it's some of the most remote area in the lower 48. You know what I mean? So if there's ever going to be anywhere there could be a Sasquatch, that's where one could be, because it's just, there's like one human per square mile up there, which is, not very many, it's just unbelievable I just can't not believe that there isn't something like that, with all the firsthand accounts and things that happened to there's no explaining what happened to me. Something threw a freaking boulder at me, man. It's no way around it. My wife was terrified, and so was I.
No, I can understand. And I believe, as I was telling our previous guest, I believe that Bigfoot is real. There's a lot of things that, you can say, question, but I believe that there's one conspiracy that is really true.
I forgot to ask him if he thought that Mothman was an offspring, a genetic offspring of Bigfoot, because Mothman, although Mothman has red eyes, but Mothman can fly, but they are very, very tall, and they look suspiciously like Bigfoot, but only they have wings.
Never heard of that. But But I will say this: people don't realize that humans on average have about 3% Neanderthal in us. So there's this humans had crossbred with Neanderthal thousands of years ago, and of course the more intelligent humanoid was able to phase out the. But whatever the case is, what if there's still a remnant of Neanderthals out there? There's just a very few of them.
They are. They're in Washington D.C. That's where you'll find them all.
Right. Yeah. Joe Biden.
We don't hunt them. We elect them. That's the
right.
problem.
Exactly. Run the country. But anyways, it's speaking of that, our country is truly a train wreck, and
right now
I don't.
You know what? You should run for office. I'm dead serious. You turned your life around. You've done a lot of good things. You've written a couple of really great books. You've got your life in order. You got a radio show. You're a conservative. You've got a lot of common sense. You probably would know how to deal with crime from
right.
I mean,
I'd be hard on crime.
Right. Yes. That's what I meant. You probably would be. And so have you ever considered a run for public office?
Well, I have discussed this with my wife. I mean, obviously you'd have to build up, some campaign funds and a platform, run local, all that. But my wife she's very against it, but I think I could do some good. But the truth is, and I told my wife, if I was ever going to run for office, you have to play the game, which means you have to act like one of them. You have to be a nepotist. You have to be a narcissist. You have to be a liar and a cheat. And the only way to raise up through the ranks is just play the game. Keep playing the game. And I tell her, once I get to the level of like senator or something, then I'd be like, gotcha. I'm not the scumbag. I'm taking all you people down. I got everybody on recorded, like videos, everybody lying and cheating. I would love to do that, but I'm not even sure as a felon, somebody who has 17 felonies on their record, I don't know if I could run. Maybe I could, but
wait a minute. But you don't understand. Every one of the people that are in office right now are felons. They're just not convicted yet.
Right. Exactly.
Many of them have committed worse crimes than you ever did.
David, didn't they say that as a felon you can still run for president?
Of course you can.
Yeah, I think you can hold public office, but they're going to attack you. Could you imagine my opponents, who would say, this guy was a mob associate. He was a gangster. He robbed people. He robbed banks. He did this and that. And my argument would be just, listen, that was in another life. I haven't had a traffic ticket in 20 years.
Right.
I'm a outstanding member of my community. People love me. People like me. I'm honest. I've done this. I've done that. I'm an inspirational speaker.
You probably still have contacts within that community that could tell you that they have given money to the very candidate that you're debating. And you could say, well, look at this. Yeah. You took money from this guy, or
this is how you get in trouble, though. This is you don't want to bark up that tree. Trust me, man. The mafia in Detroit still has a foothold, and they have a lot of friends in the government. In fact, that's probably their primary thing is in terms of organized crime. Is it's not like selling drugs, and it's not like extortion and racketeering. It is union manipulation. It is government corruption, where they basically they help people. The unions vote for their particular person that the mafia wants in place. When that person becomes the comptroller or mayor or city councilman or whatever, then they say, all right, we're going to bid on this contract to redo these bridges or the roads or build a school or whatever. And of course, they're going to inflate the bid 20, 30%, get the contract, give a kickback to the politician. And they all hang. I remember when I was young, working security at casino nights. They were like charity casino nights, right? And I was real naive at the time. I didn't really realize what they were. It was kind of weird. I was like, why would they need security at a charity event? Well, it turns out I'd have to work the door. I have a list of invitees on there, and if you were on that list, you couldn't come in. And the reason for that is because there was judges and prosecutors and lawyers, businessmen, media people, on and on, hanging out together with the mafia. The mafia was in there having drinks and partying and hanging out, gambling. Of course, all the money that was lost, some of it was supposed to go to charity, and I'm sure it did. but you know, they may make $100,000-$200,000 in a night in gambling and give like 10 grand of it to the charity, you know, and then they keep it. And I couldn't believe how many like upstanding members of society, businessmen and judges and lawyers and stuff were in there partying and hanging out with mafioso, high level mafioso. They were having drinks, they were laughing with each other. And I'm like, Jesus, that's a freaking mob boss having a you know, a drink over there at the roulette table with a judge, sitting judge. This is crazy, man. I had a drink at the Italian festival with the judge that sentenced me to prison, right? He even bought my book. I went behind this tent with him and a couple other guys, a mob associate dude. And he said, "Who was the judge you put in prison?" I said, "Judge Coretti." And the other guy looks at the other guy and goes, "What are the odds?" And I look over and I go, "Judge Coretti?" And he kind of smiles. I said, "Man, you got fat," because he gained a bunch of weight. It had been like 15 years, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, and everybody was hanging out, drinking and having drinks together. You know, mob guys and judges. It's just how corrupt it really is. So it's crazy.
We're out of time. But quickly, tell people where they can get your book for Christmas.
Well, everybody, make sure to check out my books, To Be a King, Volume 1 and 2. That's a story that's about a fictional mafia family set in Detroit. Everybody's compared it to The Godfather. It's been optioned for films. I also own Arthing Apparel, so you can check it out at arthingapparel.com. Also, just go to my website, Gunner Detroit, GUNNER Detroit.com, and then there's links to everything I do. I have a radio show called Our Thing on 1010 The King, Atlanta. So make sure to check that out. And my YouTube channel is Gunner Detroit. I've been just posting more outdoor stuff lately. I have a plan. This documentary and thing that I'm working on, TV series, I'm going to promote all that stuff later. So right now I'm just kind of on pause. But anyways, thanks for having me, you guys. Hope everybody checks me out.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we can't wait to do it again. You're very, very, very intelligent, very entertaining, and we always enjoy having you on. And consider a political career. Right.
Yeah,
right.
consider a political career and call David and go have some coffee.
I will vote for you because I'm in Michigan, just like you are.
Yeah.
Who
knows, man? I'm not ruling it out. Just saying.
Thanks, Alan. We appreciate it.
Have a great week, guys.
Alan Gunner Lindbloom here on the Awake Nation. Finally today, you know, it is the Christmas season, and there are certain things during the holiday season that are overexposed, as you probably know. Now, one of the things that's been overexposed, not just at Christmas, but all year long, is, of course, Britney Spears.
Yes.
Right? Britney Spears. I mean, you've seen her on Instagram. She's on TikTok. She's on, she's on all these social media platforms. And half the time, she has no clothes on. So, taking a little bit of a cue from Elvis, and a couple of the boys in the back room got together and they put together a song, which we're going to close out the show with today. It's called "I'll Have a Nude Christmas with Britney."
Well, it's another new photo of Britney. Another bed, stark naked selfie, unprotected in the raw, smiling and carefree. But after several hundred times, there's not much new to see. And when those page clicks start slowing, that's when more skin starts showing. As she blows us a smooch, we all can see her. 'Cause it's another nude Britney.
Now you're awake, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Awake Nation. We will be back tomorrow morning, hopefully, between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. and noon Eastern. Don't forget to join us on our YouTube channel, The Awake Nation News. We post a new edition of the news by 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We are out of time, so we're out of here. Zublick out.
Shepard out.
Goodbye for today from the Awake Nation, with co-host David Zublick and Penny Shepard. We invite you to join us live on Rumble and at awakenation.tv, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. Join us for the Awake Nation News, a 30-minute quick shot of truth with a shot of espresso, 8 a.m. to 8:30 Central, 9 a.m. to 9:30 Eastern, followed by 5 sets of 30-minute interviews with influencers who defy the mainstream narrative. The Awake Nation, the truth with a shot of espresso. Please join us on YouTube at The Awake Nation News for an additional 30 minutes of breaking news, posting Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Central and 6 p.m. Eastern. On behalf of The Awake Nation, with co-hosts David Zublick and Penny L.A. Shepard, we humbly thank our Dark Outpost and Awake Nation family. We thank you for watching The Awake Nation and ask you to join us again each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. Ship doo 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 doo, yeah. Ship doo 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 doo. Ship doo 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 doo, yeah.